So last time we had a double episode of Kinzo killing his own sons and daughters, and now we had Maria killing her own mother. So I guess this episode 4, is quite something. It was a pitch black room. There were no windows, and with the weak light bulb, one could just barely make out the state of things around them. It appeared to be an old forgotten underground storage room, with some kind of dusty furniture haphazardly thrown into it. However, even with a little light, one could at least make out that this probably wasn't a storage room. After all, that room was sealed off with iron bars.
ここはどこなの?
Kiria is still alive. Kind of messes up with my theory.
わからん。ここは屋敷の地下なのか。食堂の真下にこんな部屋があったのか。
They have dropped into what appeared to be a pit, falling into this room. Therefore, it was natural to assume that this room was directly under the dining hall. However, not even Krauss could bring himself to believe that there were pitfalls rigged in his beloved dining hall, where he had enjoyed his meals for years, and that this dungeon-like room lay directly below it. But the ceiling above was of a crude stone craftsmanship, and they couldn't understand how they could have fallen from somewhere up there. No, all 5 people who had been dropped here thought the same thing. Although they had the sensation of falling into a pit, there was no way there could be pitfalls in the dining hall, nor could this dungeon-like place be directly under it. But the truth was that they actually had fallen into this place and were locked in, so they were confused.
あの高さから落ちて誰も怪我をしなかったのは幸運かもしれませんな。シャノン、カノン、君たちはこんな部屋の存在は知っていたかね。
いいえ、僕たちもこのような部屋のことは存じかねます。
Lies. I'm sensing lies.
本当に？
本当です。本当にこの部屋知りません。
Complete lies. Despite their age, Kiria apparently wouldn't have found it odd if they, as servants are allowed to wear the one-winged eagle, might know of the mansion's secret tricks. There was a long silence, as if Krauss was evaluating their answers.
いや、シャノンたちが知らないのは事実だろう。何しろ、綺麗好きのシャノンだ。
But they knew the attackers, so why aren't they mad?
彼女がこの部屋を知っていたなら、もっとピカピカに磨き上げているだろう。この部屋の汚さが、君たちがこの部屋を知らないことの証だ。今はそんなことより、これからどうするかの方が先決だと思わんかね。その通りです。警察に、いえ、それから救急にも早く電話をしなければ。
Ange's words were hollow. Obviously, 6 people had been killed in the dining hall. Everybody had seen the exact moment where they'd been killed, and since half of their heads had been destroyed, anyone could tell that the deaths had been instant with just a single glance. Everyone understood that first aid no longer held any meaning.
ありがとう、南條先生。私たちは伴侶がもう生きてはいないことを理解できてる。気休めでも救急と言い添えてくれてありがとう。
まずい。
Once again, a gloomy silence dominated the atmosphere. But Krauss shook his head harshly over and over for the time being, decided to forget the pain of losing his wife, and to dedicate himself and figure out where they were.
みんな聞きたまえ。親父はもうダメだ。口で言って理解や説明が求められる段階にもうない。
Nobody answered. Without any kind of discussion or mercy, 6 people had been killed in an instant, and Kings had been so bold as to proclaim that we'd become sacrifices for a ceremony involving 13 murders. Since we've been locked up in this place, we too will probably become the ceremony's next sacrifices soon. Around this time, our eyes became used to the darkness, and bit by bit, we were able to understand more about the dungeon's interior. What we thought was furniture haphazardly left in the dungeon turned out not to be furniture at all. They were things like small cages to lock people in, restraint, or else torture racks. At any rate, it was obvious that this was eerier than a mere jail cell, reminding me of the Sonozaki's garden secret room where they tortured people. Oh god. Since the objects were rushed together and coated in thick dust, there was no doubt that they've been forgotten. You could even call these things Kinzo's sealed and forgotten madness. However, we've been locked away in this room. Those objects weren't exactly comforting to people who were locked up, hoping to be released without harm.
とにかくここを抜け出そう。私たちは伴侶や友人を失い、涙を流すことに時間を費やしたいが、今はそれ以上に。
So Gohda and Kumasawa escaped to the guest house instead of going anywhere else. I guess they thought the guest house might have been safe. Then you have most of the siblings now dead. Only Shannon, Canon, Nanjo, Kyrie, and now Krauss here.
祈るしかない。そういえば、熊沢さんと合田さんはここにはいないな。
ひょっとすると無事に逃げ延びられたのかも。
かもしれませんな。子供たちと合流しててくれれば心強いのですが。
Kyrie being alive really messes up my theory, actually.
合田さんはいざという時頼りになるし、熊沢さんは経験豊富で落ち着いてるし。
If it was Natsuki alive instead of Kyrie, then my theory might have worked.
きっと力になってくれると思います。
I think that maybe Krauss is behind. I was thinking that Krauss and Shannon might be behind this time around. And then they sent Gohda and Kumasawa to the guest house after they killed the siblings. But that doesn't make sense because Kyrie is still alive. Shannon and Krauss smiled bitterly a little, but they quickly realized how improper that was and stopped, clearing their throats. Is there something between Shannon and Krauss? Like not a more of an understanding relationship, maybe. I mean, Natsuki complains a lot about Shannon.
同感ね。お父様が食堂で執行したのは魔女の碑文の第1の番の6人殺しなんでしょ。なら第2の番は寄り添いし2人を引き裂け。逃げ隠れて寄り添っている合田さんと熊沢さんがもう殺されている可能性だって否定できないわ。きっとゲストハウスに合流してて子供たちを守ってくれているなんて楽観。現時点では全くできないわよ。
There might be something between Shannon and Krauss. Not a romantic relationship, but something else, I think. Kyrie coldly analyzed the worst case scenario. For her, it was heartbreaking to have lost her beloved husband. But right now, the most important thing was protecting that husband's son. Really? Really? along with the other children, from becoming the insane family head's sacrifices. Are you sure? Didn't you hate Battler though? She overcame her sadness with the parental urge to protect children from sorrow. Kyrie? Really? Press X to doubt. It seems that both Kyrie and Krauss were strong enough to forget about their grief, if only for the time being. We let their tears flow later. In order to protect the children, they had to act. Oh, sorry. Need to...
とにかくここを脱出しよう。相当古い牢屋のようだ。なんとか鉄格子を破れないだろうか。室内をくまなく探して脱出手段を探してみよう。
ここにはガラクタがいろいろあるわ。何か役に立ちそうな道具とか落ちてないかしら。武器になるものがあるかもしれないし、鉄格子を破れるものがあるかもしれない。
Kyrie pulled a lighter from her pocket. She herself didn't smoke, but she kept one tucked away in her pocket to light Rudolph's cigarettes. It was an extremely valuable source of light for searching this dim dungeon.
シャノンはキリエさんを手伝い、室内を探索してくれ。カノンは私と一緒に鉄格子の具合を確かめてみよう。これだけ古い牢屋だ。ひょっとするとガタが来ているかもしれない。
私は何をお手伝いしましょうかな。
体力を温存していてください。やがてここに親父殿が現れるだろう。親父殿に言葉が届くのは南條先生だけです。ある意味南條先生に我々の命は握られているかもしれない。
私の言葉などもう届きはせんでしょう。申し訳ないがそのお役には立てそうにない。
なら南條先生のお医者としての知識を貸してください。人間を即座に混沌させるような毒って存在するのかしら。
人間を即座に混沌させる毒？どういうことですか？
私たちは落とし穴に落とされてこの地下牢に落ちてきたと信じている。あの混乱している場で私たちはそうだったろうと信じたわ。でもこの地下牢の広さを測ってみて分かった。この地下牢があの食堂の地下というのはありえないことなのよ。
どうしてありえないってわかるんですか？
姉さんはバカだな。この地下牢は食堂に比べて狭すぎる。
その通り。1番目に落とされたのはクラウス兄さん、2番目が私。クラウス兄さんはこの部屋に落ちてきた時その場を動いたかしら。
お恥ずかしながら落下の痛みでうめいていたよ。そのすぐ傍らにキリエさんがすぐに落ちてきたんだ。
Kyrie-san came crashing down next to me.
食堂でのクラウス兄さんと私の立ち位置と落下時の落下場所の距離が明らかにおかしいのよ。
確かに言われてみればその通りです。その次に落ちたのは私だからお二人の位置関係はよく覚えている。食堂でのお二人の間の距離はこの部屋よりもあったかもしれない。
私たちは落とし穴に落ちてダイレクトにここに落下したわ。集合する下水道管みたいに一度集められてからここに落ちたわけじゃない。落下は一瞬だったでしょ。そんな凝った排水管みたいな穴を転がされた覚えはないわ。
確かに落とし穴では説明がつかんな。おかしな話だ。
Maybe something in the food.
それとキリエ様のおっしゃる人間を即座に混沌させる毒というのはどう関係があるんですか？
キリエ様は多分食堂に落とし穴なんかなかったとお考えなんじゃないかな。
Oh
しかし
man.
現に私たちは落ちたぞ。
I've missed Canon. I've missed Canon a lot.
落とし穴に落ちたような気がするが正解よ。無理もないわ。 そうとしか例えられない体験だったから。
なるほど。つまりこうおっしゃいたいわけですな。私たちは落とし穴に落とされたのではなく、例えば毒矢のようなもので撃たれ瞬時に意識を失い、その倒れて床に突っ伏す瞬間の記憶をまるで落とし穴に落ちたよと思い込んでしまっているのかもしれないと。
なるほど。食堂に無数の落とし穴が仕掛けられていて、我々がそれに何十年も気づかず食事をしていたとするよりは、よほど説得力のある話だ。
I mean, okay, I can revise a little bit. I think that maybe something was put in the food, and maybe Shannon and Cannon are accomplices now, and drag them all here, and now they're here as well,
姉さん、
just to keep up the act, I
時計はあ
think.
る。
うん。懐中時計があるわよ。22時40分くらいね。
僕の時計もそうなってる。つまり僕たちは食堂での大騒ぎから十数分の時間を経過させてないってことになる。
私の時計も同様だ。我々が混沌させられてどこかへ担ぎ込まれたと仮定するには、時間の経過が短すぎる。
Does anybody else has a watch?
時間だけを見るなら、やはり我々は食堂の真下へ落とし穴で落とされたと考えるのが妥当だ。
I mean, this might be a ploy by Krauss as well. He could have manipulated the time and instructed Shannon and Cannon to do the same.
時計の針なんていくらでもいじれるわ。私たちが気絶している間に全員の時計を巻き戻したのかもしれない。その可能性がなかったことは証明不能よ。
Kira is smarter than I thought.
落とし穴にせよ、混沌させる毒にせよ、私たちは用心するに越したことはないというわ
I
け
think
ですが。
Kira is starting to realize
それで南條先生、
that there's something very wrong with the situation.
混沌させる毒は存在するんですか？
それは、桐江さんの論法と同じですな。私の知らない未知の毒物にそういう効用のものがないとは証明できません。
用心に越したことはないということね。ごめんなさい。無駄な質問だったわ。ただ私の仮説により、この地下牢が食堂の真下とは限らないという可能性は示唆できたと思う。
なるほど。広大な森の中のどこかに隠されていると噂される親父殿の隠し屋敷の地下牢に運び込まれている可能性もあると。ここを脱出して外へ出ればそれもわかる。それを詮索するのはここから出てからでもいいだろうな。
その通りね。
Kira being alive really messes with my theories.
本当にごめんなさい。さっきから無駄な質問と詮索ばかりだわ。
いや、とても頼もしいよ。今後も何かに気づいたら教えてくれたまえ。ここを脱出する何かのヒントになるかもしれない。ルドルフからいつも聞かされていたよ。君の発想にはいつも驚かされ、時には重要なヒントにもなるとね。君がここにいてくれたのは不幸中の幸いだ。
ありがとう。私もルドルフさんに聞いてるわ。クラウス兄さんは普段は威張っているけれど、いざという時は責任感にあふれる頼りがいのある兄だって。
さすがにそれは世辞が過ぎるね。くそ。それにしても頑丈な鉄格子だ。カノンの方はどうかね。
Let me see. Oh, I see. I'm
いい
sorry.
え、こちらも全く。
So there's two sides to the jail cell. Krauss and Cannon tried wiggling the bars in various ways. There were a few bars that could be twisted, and a few that had enough space to rattle a little bit around in, but they couldn't be broken with human strength alone. However, there was still hope that if they could use some kind of lever-like tool. It was still far too early to give up yet. The children's lives were hanging in the balance. If there was no hope, they couldn't stop their struggle. And it was better for them to act this way, if they were to stop. There's no doubt that they once again be overcome by the grief of losing their loved ones, and curl up, clutching their knees.
Kirieさんたちの方はどうかね。何か見つかったかね。
握って隠せる程度の石ころは見つかるわ。こんなものでも武器にはなるかも。さすがに鉄格子を削り取ることは無理でしょうね。シャノンちゃんはどう？
いいえ、何も。これ電話です。
A phone. A phone in a jail cell. What is wrong with... Why is their phone in a jail cell?
繋がってるわけもないわ。でもコードは何かを縛ったり武器にも使えるかも。壊して分解すれば金属部品を取り出せるわ。
If there's a phone here, then it's working.
クラウス兄さん、鉄格子を開ける鍵穴はもちろんあるわよね。
ああ、だいぶ鍵穴の大きい大時代的なものだがね。針金のようなものでいじれば騙せるかもしれないな。
電話の金属部品で何か代用できるかもしれない。その電話武器になるわね。
投資と同じだよ。情報は武器だ。
Krauss and Kyrie laughed together at how they hadn't even thought of using the phone as a means of communication.
何やってんの、お姉さん。
その電話つながってるかなって思って。
Oh, I see. Shannon, you're such a... Oh god, Shannon, you're just so...
バカだな、姉さんは。
あれ？
At that point, Shannon let out a small, surprised cry.
キリエ様、この電話つながってます。
なんですって？
Kyrie, you should notice there's something very wrong with this. A phone in a jail cell, and it's working. And who notices it first? No, who tries to make sure the phone is actually working? Who does that? It was Shannon. Come on, realize it already. This is all a play. Come on. It was like when people move out of an office, taking everything with them, leaving only the telephone behind. That's the feeling of the phone gave off. It had been left in the corner of the cell. The cord was wound up into a coil, the tip of it being swallowed by the wall. And just looking at it, there was no reason to assume that it wasn't hooked up. But to think that it actually was. Kyrie took the receiver from Shannon and pressed it to her ear. Certainly, the electric hum of a phone was a familiar sound. And this phone was certainly live.
なんという幸運。
Good luck, huh?
警察へ連絡しましょ
う。待ちたまえ。話がうますぎる。盗聴されているんじゃないのかね。
そんな細工するくらいなら普通は電話線を切断するわ。電柱が本気で見落とした可能性が高い。
Come on, Kyrie, you're not that stupid.
気づかれたら今度こそ電話線を切断されるかもしれないわ。警察への通報を盗聴されて何も困ることはないのだし。
Surely this was true. The point of wiretaps is to overhear some important piece of information. But the way things were right then. She couldn't think of a single thing that would come up in a conversation to the outside world that might be troublesome to have overheard. No. This phone, I think this phone is only connected to the other phones in the islands, I guess. Like a dial. Kirei instantly concluded that was more likely to be a mistake on Kinzo's part than a trap.
確かに一理あります。外線は確か0番からだ。
カノン君、私は電話するから、あなたは外の様子を伺ってくれる？誰かが近づいてくる気配があったら知らせて。
はい。
Shannon raced off towards the iron bars, silenced his breathing, and strained his ears. As everyone present watched her, Kyrie dialed 110. However, she pushed the hook down and redialed many times. It didn't seem to be working well.
外線は0番から ?110 番は0110じゃないの？うまくかからない。
貸したまえ。私がかけよう。
Krauss took the receiver in Kyrie's place and tested various things. But in the end, they were unable to notify the police. The phone itself was definitely live, but the circuit was apparently cut somewhere. Does this mean that they were not so naive?
やっぱり無理ですか。
敵も甘くはないってことね。
Man, this frustrated face of Kyrie is quite something. Kyrie let out a deep sigh, leaned against the wall, and hung her head for a while. As cool thinking as she was, for a brief moment she may actually have had the naive hope that the phone might actually work. Now just dismantle the phone, pick up the wire, and straighten it and make a pick lock a pick. She sneered at herself mockingly for holding onto that naive hope for even a single moment. Then she remembered just what was happening here. Truth be told, even after being shown a scene like that right before her eyes, or rather, exactly because of that, she still couldn't think of that gruesome mass murder as something real. It was less that she couldn't believe it, and more that she didn't want to. Stupefaction. Shormia Kinzo killed 6 family members. He summoned strange witch-like, demon-like people right out of thin air, and with something like magic began to kill people one after another. It's just all so screwed up. Even though she definitely saw it, there was no way she could accept that spectacle.
そんなことあるわけがない。あれはきっとお父様の友人か何か。それがあらかじめ食堂のどこかに隠れていて、手品的に突然姿を現して私たちを驚かせただけなんだわ。そう考えなくちゃあのめちゃくちゃを説明できない。
But when those 6 had their heads blown apart, a golden arrow had flown around and around the room. That had truly looked like magic. Is that another thing we just saw wrong? There's no way it's magic. It was definitely some kind of setup. Since those heads were smashed, there's no doubt that it's some kind of explosive. It was some kind of explosive. For example, a styrene toy plane, like they sell at candy stores, painted gold, and with a powerful explosive loaded onto the end of it. However, though it had seemed to be flying about at random, Kyrie couldn't imagine that after being fired 6 times, each time had perfectly hit the victims, square in the head, one after the other. It couldn't be that there was a computer control system for finding and hitting targets, making the high-tech styrene plane on the same level as a guided missile, right?
そんなバカバカしい仕掛けを膨大な私費を投じて作らせたと？ あのおかしな余興のためにお父様ならやりかねないって？
A number of mysterious people appeared out of thin air.
そんなバカバカしい仕掛けを膨大な私費を投じて作らせたと？あのおかしな余興のためにお父様ならやりかねないって？
6 people had their heads demolished by a mysterious golden flying object, and 5 of us were locked away in a mysterious dungeon by a mysterious set of pitfalls, or else put to sleep by some fainting poison dart. The family conference started a bit after 10 o'clock. It's only been a bit more than 30 minutes since then. Most likely, even though I witnessed it myself, an event took place in such a short period of time, so I still can't understand it, and I still can't come to grips with it. For argument's sake, even if we did get a hold of the police, it would probably be impossible for anybody to actually accurately explain what we saw. Even though I saw it just now, my brain's fried, and I had no confidence in what I saw myself. Kyrie tried her hardest to cheer herself out of her overwhelming confusion, to just hold on to her sanity.
くそ、どうなってるんだ。くそ、くそ。
Maybe it connects to other phones in the mansion. Try calling the guest house, maybe. Krauss started to become desperate, hitting the hook multiple times and resetting the dial. Krauss also began to Krauss had also been feigning composure, but he was unable to hide his panic. The more he retried the dial, the more the pretense of serenity peeled away. I don't know what's going on anymore. Curie couldn't help but pray that the events that had just occurred were a dream. At the time, the look of Krauss's face changed.
呼び出してる。呼び出してるぞ。コール音がする。
本当ですか、クラウスさん。
なるほどな。親父め、浅はかな。警察に連絡されまいと外部への電話線は切断したらしいが、内線は切断し損ねている。
内線？クラウスさんはどこにかけているの？
Guesthouse, obviously. Krauss. If Krauss is behind this, then he sent Kumasawa and Gohda to the guest house. Now he's gonna call the guest house.
ゲストハウスだ。
Yeah.
ジェシカたちの部屋の内線番号にかけている。
This is all a play.
もしもし、私だ。
This is all a scheme from Krauss, I think.
お前は誰か？ゴーダか？ジェシカはいるか？無事か？
旦那様、ご無事でよかった。はい、ジェシカお嬢様たちも皆さんご無事です。
父さん。
It means that all the servants, even Shannon and Cannon, are accomplices.
父さんなの？無事でよかった。母さんは無事なの？そこにいるの
Krauss choked on his words. Krauss had clearly seen Nazi's head crushed. Nazis head crushed. Had seen her killed right before his eyes. Eventually, he was going to have to tell that to Jessica. However, Krauss began to fret over whether he should tell her now or not, and lost his words. But even that wasn't answered under these circumstances.
母さんはわからない。無事を祈ろう。今はお前だけでも無事でよかった。分か
ってるよ。聞いて。ごめん。
Jessica's voice was filled with tears. Krauss was certain now. Jessica and the rest had heard everything, start to finish, after meeting up with Gohda and Kumasawa at the guest house. When they learned that 6 people had been killed, they must have been anxious to rush over to the dining hall. Luckily, he'd been able to call before they stormed off towards the mansion. Krauss was relieved at this good timing during such a tragedy.
ここには今、キリエさんと南條先生、それにシャノンとカノンがいる。地下牢のようなところに閉じ込められているが、心配するな。 こっちは父さんたちで何とかする。
どこ？助けに行く。
あいにく私たちにもここがどこだか見当もつかむ。食堂の真下だと思っているが、そうでないかもしれない。とにかくジェシカ、そこを出てはならん。ゴーダたちから経緯は聞いているか？
小さなみんなを
おじい様は今正常な状態にない。出くわせば危険だ。殺されるかもしれない。私たちを助けに来ようなどと絶対に思ってはならんぞ。こっちはこっちで何とかする。
じゃあ私たちはどうすればいいの？小さなめ、よくも母さんたちを、死に損ないぶっ殺してやる。
ジェシカ、そんな言葉を使ったら母さんが悲しむぞ。レディーはそんな言葉を使うもんじゃない。とにかくお前たちは身の安全を最優先にしろ。ゲストハウスを戸締まりするんだ。しかし過信はできない。1階のラウンジの大窓は破られるかもしれない。その部屋にとどまりベッドを立てかけてバリケードにするんだ。その部屋にはトイレも冷蔵庫もあるな。明日の朝までは籠城できるはずだ。いいな。くれぐれも物騒なことは考えるな。母さんの敵を取ろうなんて絶対に考えるんじゃないぞ。相手を刺激せず隠れてやり過ごすことだけを考えるんだ。
分かったよ、父さん。
After that, Gohda took the phone and was firmly told to supervise the kids. Well, as an adult. Gohda, with his face covered in a cold sweat, repeatedly replied, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir," in an excessively tense voice. From there, Kyrie took the receiver and spoke with Battler, and when Shannon and Kenan got their turns, George and Jessica answered. Following that pattern, Nanjo and Kumasawa picked up as well, so that all members of both sides took the receiver in turn, confirming that everyone was safe for now, even if their location was unknown, and encouraging each other, coming to an understanding on the current situation for both sides. They wanted to talk forever, now was not the time to chat. Krauss explained they would be hanging out for now, and those in the guest house consented.
また何かあったら連絡する。すぐに受話器を取れるように待機していてくれ。くれぐれも用心してな。無茶なことは絶対にするんじゃないぞ。
分かったよ、父さんや。カノン君たちが無事だっただけでも儲けもんってやつさ。私たちも頑張る。
So,
父さんたちもどうか無事で。
man, Kyrie being alive really
ああ、もちろんだ。
destroys everything.
それでは一度切る。
I've been thinking.
用心しろ。
With that, the phone call ended. Gohda and the rest of the men quickly descended to the first floor, closed the shutters, and secured the sturdy locks on the doors. However, just as Krauss had worried, there was nothing that could be done about the beautiful wide window in the first floor lounge. If someone broke that, it would be easy to get inside. It would be hard for someone like Kinzo, who had hesitated at committing murder, to invade the first floor.
おじい様たちは武装している可能性が高い。部屋に閉じこもるのが最善かつ唯一の籠城方法になるね。自ら密室に閉じこもらざるを得ないのは苦しいところだけど、相手が銃を持っていたらそれしか方法がない。
親方様は実銃のコレクションをお持ちとの話です。そう、あれは銃だ。銃だったんだ。だとしたら恐ろしい威力の銃だ。とても太刀打ちはできません。
頭を砕くなんてすげえ威力だぜ。マグナム弾とかそういう類のやつかもな。下手な扉なら平気で貫通するかもしれねえな。
だとすればますますに部屋に籠城するべきだね。ベッドを立てかけて窓も塞ごう。そこまですればいくら銃を持っていても 踏み込むことはできないはず。
くそ、そんな受け身な防戦一方しかねえのかよ。ちくしょう。うちの親父に上等を決めてくれて桐江さんまで捕まえたなんて、こいつは高くつくぞ。クソじじいめ。
無理です。あんな連中に太刀打ちできるわけがありません。しかも親方様だけでなく手下も何人も。あるいはあんな連中がもっといるかも。あいつらは一体何なんだ。
Battler was filled to the brim with the urge to get revenge for Rudolph and to rush out of here to save Kyrie. But just by looking at how terrified Gohda was, there's no doubt in him that this would be reckless.
兄貴だって悔しいだろ。なのにここで籠城なんて。ちくしょ
う。もちろんさ、僕だって悔しいよ。両親を殺されて冷静でいられるわけがない。
And Shannon captured.
でもだからこそ冷静にならなくちゃいけない。僕たちが無駄に命を落とすようなことを殺された親たちが望むと思うかい？思うわけがない。せめて子供だけは逃げ延びてほしいと願ってるはずだ。だから僕は生き残るよ。そして警察に通報し全てを暴く。仇は法廷が取る。それが僕の復讐だ。差し違えてでも仇を取ってほしいなんて親たちが望んでいるわけもない。そうだろう。
そうだな、兄貴の言う通りだぜ。ちくしょう、クソじじいめ。何か儀式だ。俺たちがそのための生贄だって言うなら意地でも逃げ切ってその儀式を台無しにしてやるぜ。
それでいいよ。それにバトラ君にはまだ桐江さんがいる。
And Ange, don't forget Ange.
僕にだってシャノンがいる。とにかく慎重に行動してチャンスを待とう。僕たちの不用意な行動は囚われの彼らに不利益を与える可能性だってあるんだから。
人質か。でもじいさまはきっと桐江さんたちを生贄にするために捕らえたわけだろ。俺たちが助けなきゃ殺されるのを待つだけじゃないのか。
彼らが捕らえられている地下牢がどこにあるかもわからない。シャノンもカノン君ももちろんゴーダさんも熊沢さんも知らなかった。おじいさまだけしか知らない秘密の場所にある可能性が極めて高い。そんな状況下でうろうろと歩き回るのは自殺行為だよ。
分かってるよ。それでもくそ、俺たちはここで何かが起こるまで引きこもってるしかねえってのかよ。
バトラ様のお気持ちは分かりますが、ここは安全第一で参りましょう。旦那様の話では相当古い牢屋らしいので、なんとか鉄格子を破れるかもしれないとのことでした。今は信じて待つ方が賢明です。
おじい様の手下が何人もいてみんな武装しているんだよね。
そうです。そして多分みんな武装を。
Gohda had been able to say that Kinzo had comrades with him, but he hadn't been able to mention that they were mostly young women, like witches, who had used strange magic to murder. He has said that he would only have cast doubt on his sanity. No, not only that, he himself still couldn't understand what he had seen, and was doubting his own sanity. But regardless of sex or appearance, regardless of whether it was done with magic or a gun, the fact that those girls had followed Kinzo's orders and had killed six people in an instant was an unshakable truth. If that group came to attack the guest house as well, what would happen? Just closing the doors and windows like this was surely meaningless. Flip the chessboard. Flip the chessboard around, and what do you get? Gohda and Kumasawa. The only thing left for those two that witnessed that massacre in the dining hall was to cradle their heads without knowing how to interpret what they had seen.
熊沢さん大丈夫？お茶飲む？ ありがとうございますね。ありがとうございます。
So Maria met Beatrice and Virgilia in the Quadorian, right? The hidden mansion.
申し訳ございませんが、しばらくそっとしていただけますか。
But that might have been Kumasawa and Shannon trying to manipulate Maria. Maria tried to be nice, but it seemed that Kumasawa still hadn't been able to clear away her confusion.
マリア、気を使ってくれてありがとうだぜ。熊沢さんは休ませてやってくれ。
Jessica was also worried about the shock those two must have received after witnessing such a tragedy. But her wildest dreams couldn't even come close to the unbelievable scene Kumasawa had witnessed. Nevertheless, with her mother murdered and her father captured, it wasn't as though Jessica could stay calm either. She sealed her anxiety and sadness, using her anger towards Kinzo, and walked irritatedly around the room.
熊沢さん。
Voiceless.
母さんは本当に死んじゃったの？
ええ。あんなひどい死に方を私は見たことがありませんとも。
ひょっとするとまだ生きてて手当てをすれば助かるなんてことはないんだよな。
頭があんなことになって生きていられるわけがありません。
そりゃそうだぜ。頭が砕けちまったら手当てなんて必要ねえよな。
When Gohda had come flying to the guest house, he had, overcome with agitation, told about the massacre in the dining hall without concealing anything, except for the part about witches and magic, which they themselves still couldn't believe. In other words, he hadn't even sugarcoated the cold-blooded way in which Natsu and the others had died. It was too late now, but Kumasawa regretted the fact that he'd obviously said too much. However, while shaking her head and with a slightly painful laugh, Jessica spoke.
いや、むしろ話してくれたおかげで冷静になれたぜ。頭を砕かれちまったってところを伏せられてたら、私はひょっとすると生きてるかもしれないって言って屋敷へ向かいじいさまに手食わして、ひょっとすると殺されてたかもしれない。一抹の希望が命取りになった可能性だってあるわけさ。その意味では感謝してるよ。
本当に申し訳ございません。言葉をあまりに選ばなかったことはお詫びします。
今はいいよ。母さんはもうどうしようもないけど、父さんはまだ生きてる。カノン君もシャノンもキリエおばさんも南條先生もね。なんとか彼らを助けたいし、彼らに負担をかけないためにも余計なことをするべきではない。電話の前で待機してることが今は一番の協力になるかもしれないし。
They might receive a phone call asking them to create a diversion while the others escaped. Or the others might discover their location and call for a rescue. Jessica understood that in order to act promptly when the time came, the only thing they could do for the time being was to wait in this room. Once they had finished inspecting the downstairs area and locking up, George, Battler, and Gohda returned. Each was holding various objects. George had things like drinks, canned food, crackers, and other types of snacks he'd found in a lounge in a storage room, as well as a first aid kit. They were all consumables that would be essential during a siege. Gohda had large folding ladder and carpentry tools. Those were to seal the door from the inside, just in case. If it came to it, the ladder was for escaping out the window. Battler had brought up objects that could be used as edged weapons or poles. In addition to the obvious kitchen knife, there was a disassembled table leg that could be used as a club, a the pole roughly the size of a person, which apparently made by taking apart a hat stand. Even though the pole had no point, it could surely be used as like a spear, and you have knives to sharpen the point. There was a good chance that their enemies had guns, so it was dubious whether these would be of any use. It was still better than not having them, and if having these could give them at least a little peace of mind, then they'd be useful for their calming effect. Then the table, the bed, and sofa were placed up against the door, barricading it. They didn't go so far as to seal it up with nails. There was still a chance that Krauss and the others would escape and come to meet up with them. They had apparently set up a barricade at the top of the stairs as well. It had been set up in a way that would create a racket, so it would serve as a warning alarm as well. I mean, the broken glass would also set up. It had apparently been Battler's idea. For that reason, they turned the TV off. This way, if the first floor window were to be broken, they would hear. Once the switch had been turned off, all was left was an eerie silence. Sound of violent wind and rain. Were they going to have to spend the whole night being crushed by such a suspense? Oh god, the music is so good! The boat will probably come tomorrow morning. However, judging by the weather report, most of tomorrow was going to be covered in a typhoon, and the boat probably wouldn't come. The typhoon was set to pass by the morning of the day after tomorrow. In other words, the boat would be arriving in the morning after the morning of October 6th. And right now, it was late at night on October 4th. Man, this is like a desperate... This is already desperation before the day actually begins. They will have to spend more than 30 hours on this island. Kinzo turned cold-blooded murderer and his weird companions prowling about. Oh god, this is so tense. This is so good. Even with the shutters closed, there would definitely be a little bit of light seeping out. Might let the enemy know they were hiding here. Butler suggested it might be best to turn off the lights. They had already been overwhelmed by a ghastly feeling just by turning the TV off. There wasn't anyone who directly challenged his proposal. Then again, there wasn't a single person who agreed with it.
Oh, テレビダメなの？
ああ、悪いが我慢してくれ。敵の侵入の音を聞き逃すわけにはいかない。
つまんない。
Even though she had been told of her mother's death, Maria alone didn't feel an approaching sense of danger. She just seemed to be upset that the TV had been turned off. Even though she's in a much bizarre situation, can she not share in a sense of danger? Is it because she's so young? To Battler, even this faintly unsettling feeling from such a young girl made him sense that there was something very eerie about Maria.
"
残念だが想像以上に堅牢だ。いつ頃に作られたものか知らんが耐用年数も文句なし。実に優良な物件だよ。
Chewie chuckled softly. They had no moves they could make, but she calmed down just a little.
さながらここは取られた駒を置く駒置き場ですな。打つ手はもはやありませんか。
まだよ。諦めるには早いわ。思考の停止は鼓動の停止に同じよ。
だな、チェスの駒置き場に意味はないが、将棋ならば大きな意味を持つこともある。駒置き場の一枚の歩が相手にプレッシャーを与えることだってあるはずだ。
なるほど。しかしこの鉄格子はどうしようも。
私たちにはね。でもここの場所を特定し、ゴーダさんに連絡することができれば助けに来てもらうことはできるかも。
なるほど。しかしゴーダさんに危険を強いることになりますな。その場合、成人男性が不在になるゲストハウスのお子さんたちも不安です。
I mean, there's Battler there.
リスクを恐れるなら事態が好転するまで塩漬けにするのも悪くない。もっとも損切りを恐れれば紙切れ同然になるかもしれんがね。我々の命がだが。
親の子犬もね、私たちで何とかするからおとなしくしていなさいって偉そうに電話して、その下の根も乾かないうちに助けを求めるなんて、実に格好悪いわね。
この後に及んではくだらんプライドなどとっくに紙切れだ。知恵を絞ろうじゃないか。ここはどこなんだ。本当に食堂の真下なのだろうか、それとも屋敷とは異なる別の場所だろうか。
Under the chapel, under the hidden mansion, or under the mansion. Maybe even under the guest house. Krauss, Kiria, and Ange began to discuss this further. Shannon was squatting by the bars, silently trying to sense anyone's presence, just as had been ordered. Shannon came close to him. They both squatted down together.
気配は感じるの？
こちらに意識は向けていないけれど、比較的近くに誰かいる。
それは人間？
ヤギたちだと思う。あいつらの吐息は実に賑やかだよ。
Ooh, the clock. Cannon's ability to sense the presence of others was several levels above that of a human. He said that their breathing was noisy, but Krauss and the rest couldn't even pick up the slightest hint of it. Therefore, if he had obediently reported it, they would have merely doubted Cannon's ears.
捕まっちゃったね。
珍しいよ。殺されないで捕まるなんて。
今回はベアトリーチェ様がお越しにならないし、親方様が書斎を出られるし、何が何だかわかんないね。
This time, oh god, Shannon and Cannon and Gohda are real. Oh, Gohda no, Genji are truly different than the rest, right?
わかるさ。何が起ころうと変わろうと、すべてあの魔女の気まぐれと余興。
This is so good. Look at the paneling. Oh, look at the screen with the bars on their faces. This is so good.
結果は何も変わらないのさ。
今回は黄金鏡に
Break free.
さあね。
Break free, right? Right, Shannon?
僕たちは脱落率が高いから。
We have a high rate of
二人
losing.
で第一の番を生き延びたのってずいぶん珍しいね。
Oh god, they're so good.
儀式が始まってるのに、こうして二人でお話できるなんて、なんだかすごく珍しい気がす
They're
る。
like a pair of Rikas who know what happened in the last and in the previous
そうかもね。
games.
でも、それもまた。
Do they know Battler's involvement in the games or just Beatrice being a bitch to them?
僕たちがいつもすぐに脱落するから、今度は少し生き延びさせて、からかってやろうくらいにしか思ってないよ。
Since we usually drop out right in the beginning.
また、黄金鏡にはたどり着けないのかな。
どうせそうさ。下手な期待を持つと、またつけ込まれる。
Oh god.
そうだね。前回はカノン君がつけ込まれたもんね。
僕はバカだ。
Wait, this is in the third chapter, right? Third episode. Canon. Oh, I remember now. Canon made a sour look and turned his head. Shannon laughed softly and apologetically leaned towards his shoulder.
でも、お嬢様が無事でよかったね。
第一の番を逃れただけさ。それ以降の番に、より無残な方法で殺されるのを待たされているだけかもしれない。それを言ったら姉さんこそ、ジョージ様が無事でよかったじゃないか。 二人で黄金鏡にたどり着けるといいね。
ありがとう。同じことをカノン君とお嬢様にも。
僕は期待はしてないよ。姉さんの言う通りだ。あの魔女はご褒美をぶら下げて相手が右往左往するのを見て楽しんでるだけなんだ。どうせ誰も黄金鏡に行けやしない。僕がお嬢様と黄金鏡にたどり着きたいと願ってしまった。あいつはそれこそ面白がって絶対に僕たちをたどり着かせたりはしないさ。
そうだね。ベアトリーチェ様はより面白くなるように生贄の順番を考えてる。
無作為に選んでるなんて大嘘だ。あのペテン師魔女め。どうせ黄金鏡にたどり着けばあらゆる願いが叶うなんてのも嘘っぱちに決まってる。
Canon is speaking facts right now.
そんなことはないよ。黄金鏡は素晴らしいところだよ。
行ったことあるの？
ちょっぴりだけね。それすらもベアトリーチェ様の戯れだったのだろうけど。
どんなとこなのそこ？
素晴らしいところだよ。うまく説明できない安らかな夢の中みたいな世界。
バラが咲き乱れてて美しい蝶が舞ってるような極楽みたいな感じ。
そういう具体的なイメージのところじゃないの。本当に夢の中みたいなところなの。そこにいるときはとても穏やかで安らかでいつまでも眠ってることを許されてる。まるで休日の早朝のお布団の中みたいな感じ。カーテンの隙間から日が差してきてそろそろ起きないと思うんだけど、今日は休日だから起きなくてもいいんだって気づいて、もう一回お布団の中に潜り込む時みたいな、そんな気持ちになれる場所。
僕なら損したと思うな。休日なのに勘違いして起き出すなんて姉さんくらいだ。それで
そこにいた時はね、満たされててとても穏やかだった。でも元の世界に戻ってくるとつい直前までそこにいたはずなのにうまく思い出すことができないの。ついさっきまで見ていた夢が思い出せないのによく似てる。でもとっても穏やかで静かな世界だったことだけは覚えてるの。
それだけ？なんだあいつが偉そうに言う黄金鏡なんて大したことないな。
Maybe it's Beatrice's magic world.
何でも願いが叶う場所だと思ってたのに。
And it makes me very concerned and very it's very on the nose that Shannon was the one who experienced it.
その通りだよ。何でも願いが叶う場所。少し違うかもしれない。何も願わなくてもいい場所が正解かもしれないね。例えばカノン君が寒くて上着が欲しいと願った時、上着をもらえればとても幸せなことだけど、そもそも暖かい部屋にいられたなら上着が欲しいなんて願う必要さえもないでしょ。黄金鏡はそういうところなの。大抵の願いは願う必要さえなくなる。全てから解放された何もかもが穏やかな世界なの。
Even in a world like that, people still wish for something else after a while.
与えられて幸せという概念さえも超越した全てから解放された世界とでも言えばいいのかな。
なんだか宗教っぽい世界だな。
そしてそこでは全てが平等なの。意志ある存在は全てが平等。人間も家具も魔女もない。そこでの私は誰とも対等で公平。もう家具だからと何も自分を恥じる必要がない。全ての人間とも、そして魔女とさえ対等な本当に幸せな世界だったの。うまく思い出せないけど、そこでは私ベアトリーチェ様とさえ対等な関係で良い友達でいられた気がする。
あの魔女がいるならろくな理想郷じゃないよ。で その幸せな黄金鏡に姉さんはジョージ様と一緒に行きたいわけだ。おかしな話だね。黄金鏡は全てが満ち足りた理想郷なわけでしょ。ジョージ様がいなくても十分に満たされてそうだけど。
Ooh. Get wrecked.
黄金鏡はね、とても穏やかで安らかで、全てが対等で公平だけれど、幸せだけ実は抜けてるの。
幸せな世界じゃないの？
もちろん安らかで穏やかで公平というだけですごい幸せな世界だよ。でもそれは例えるなら、全ての悩みというマイナスから解放されたゼロの世界なの。人の世はマイナスで満ちてるから、もちろんゼロというのはものすごい幸福なわけだけど、それでもゼロなの。贅沢だよね。それはこういう感じ。穏やかな休日の朝のまどろみの時、最愛の人も隣にいてくれて手を握っててくれたなら、もっともっと素敵な幸せになれるみたいな。ごめん、姉さんは例えが下手くそだね。
つまり姉さんにとっての最高の幸せとは、ジョージ様と一緒にその世界にたどり着くことってわけだ。
そしてきっとカノン君にとっては、お嬢様と一緒にその世界にたどり着くことだよ。
公平な世界で二人は悩みから解放されなんだかおかしな宗教を吹き込まれてるみたいだ。僕はもっとこう俗物的な魔法の薬を与えられると人間に生まれ変われるとか、そういう感じの世界を想像してたよ。
行けばわかるよ。ベアトリーチェ様が本当に気まぐれな方なら、いつかきっとカノン君にも垣間見させてくれるに違いない。そうすれば姉さんの例えがよくわかるようになるから。
ま、過剰な期待はしないことにしとくよ。いずれにせよ今回の僕たちはこれでゲームオーバーみたいだし、別の機会に期待するさ。
そうだね。おかしな期待を持つとベアトリーチェ様にまたつけ込まれる。何も考えずただ運命に身を任せるのが私たちには一番かもしれない。
They really are a pair of Rikas. Holy hell.
僕たちはただチェスの駒であればいいんだ。何を考えても考えなくても、どうせ魔女のチェス盤からは逃れられない。後のお役目はどういびり殺されるか、ただ待つことだけさ。そんな僕らに黄金鏡の夢なんて虚しすぎる。
そうだね。ごめん。
Shannon shrugged his shoulders, then told Shannon to leave him alone because she was in the way of his duty, distancing himself from her. Realizing her thoughtlessness in bringing such an inappropriate topic and instead hurting Shannon, Shannon bit her lower lip and stared at the ground. Shannon wouldn't bother him anymore. She went off and crashed down in a corner by herself. Oh. At that moment, Shannon perked up. It's like the ears of a cat when it reacts to a strange sound.
どうしたの？
旦那様、誰か来ます。
何？
They ended the conversation and strained their ears. For a while, they couldn't hear anything. But eventually, they were able to hear the shuffling sounds of a large group of people walking.
おいでなすったわね。
年貢の納め時か、さもなくも最初で最後のチャンスか。
Let me see that dungeon. Okay.
私が金蔵さんと話しましょう。なんとかここの場所を聞き出してみます。
期待してるわ。
During the last phone call, Kira had asked what time over at the Guesthouse was. By doing that, Kira had learned that it was the same as a watch, and she had learned that their watches hadn't been set back. Oh. That's interesting. wasn't just the clocks on the walls in the guest house. Several people's watches, including George's and Gohda's, had matched. If that was the case, it had been only a few minutes between the time of the massacre in the dining hall and the time they had been transported to the dungeon. Not enough time had passed for them to be knocked out and carried away. Then, were those really pitfalls? Meaning that this was the area directly under the dining hall? All that they could do was pray that Ange could find out where this was.
来ます。多分人数は4人。親方様、並びに食堂に姿を現したうちの3人かと。
もう十分だ。君も後ろに下がりたまえ。あとは私たちで応対する。
シャノンちゃん、申し訳ないけど電話のところに座ってもらえる？スカートで電話を隠して。
あ、はい。
Oh, that was good. The shuffling came close, and there was the sound of a large door being opened in the hallway. The lights they were apparently carrying illuminated the hall, stroking the walls with sharp, razor-like shadows. And then the light from the lantern they held illuminated the prisoners through the bars. The bar's sharp shadow divided them up lengthwise. There were 4 silhouettes. It was Kinzo, Renove, Virgilia, and Garb.
後ろ宮家当主皆様ご静粛に。
ゴールドスミス？
親父殿のペンネームだ。怪しげな魔導書を書くとき、そういう名を署名しているようだ。
金蔵を英語風に？それならゴールドウェアハウスが正しいんじゃないの？
Oh, get fucked, Kinzo.
ウェアハウスは倉庫、ただ溜め込むに過ぎぬ。しかし私は金を生み出し、細工し、さらに価値を高めるのだ。スミスの方がよりふさわしいと思わんかね。
God. Oh God. Him with the bars and everything in his face. It's so scary.
確かに無駄口を失礼しました。
金蔵さん、これはどういうことなんだね。ここは一体どこなんだ。おや、我が友よ、思い出せんかね。さすがにその牢の中に入った経験はないだろうが、この廊下を歩いた記憶はあるはずだ。まさか
心当たりがあるの？
いや、しかし考えられない。第一、私たちは落とし穴に落ち、しかもほんの数分でここに閉じ込められたのですぞ。そんなことは物理的に距離的にありえない。
人間にはね。
お父さん、ここは屋敷ですか？屋敷にこんな地下があったとは。
クラウス、お前たちがその存在をささやき、何度か私の後をつけ回して探ろうともしたではないか。それがここだよ。いや、正確にはそこの地下と言うべきか。まさかここはクワドリアンの地下ですか？
So you know about Quadorian?
ご検察の通りです。こちらはクワドリアンの地下でございます。
クワドリアン、まさか噂の親父殿の隠し屋敷なのか？本当に実在したのか？
我が最愛の魔女ベアトリーチェのためだけに築いた屋敷である。
Why is there a cell? You fuck! You piece of shit!
地上部分は美しき上品な屋敷なのであるが、そこを案内できず、実に残念に思うぞ。
こんな牢屋があるお屋敷で二人きりなんて素敵ね。どうもお父様とは性癖が合わないみたいよ。キリエさん、無礼な発言はお控えになった方が賢明ですよ。
でも同感よ。私も送られた屋敷にこんな力があったら100年の声も冷めて金目のものだけいただいてとんずらするわ。
Yes.
おや、そういうご趣味はございませんか。てっきりキュンキュンしちゃうとばかり。
もちろんキュンキュンしちゃうわよ。誕生日のプレゼントに首輪なんかもらっちゃったりしたらね。ただしイケメンに限る。
Okay. What is that laugh, Ronove?
お静かに。首輪より猿靴輪が必要ですか？
あら、あなたはそっちもいけちゃうの？リアって好き嫌いないのね。
Leah. Virgilia.
勝手に人の名前を略さないでください。
Okay, I'm calling you Leah from now on.
やかましいぞ女たち。お前たちも同じ牢に閉じ込められたいというのか。
これは失礼いたしました。親方様、この牢体にこのような寒い牢獄では身が持ちませぬ。
Leah quickly apologized, but Gop and Ronove merely laughed together. It was like they thought they alone couldn't be imprisoned, or else, even if someone tried to imprison them, it would be pointless.
牢とは捕らえ逃がさぬこと。それはすなわち生涯手放さぬとの強い意志と愛である。逃げても諦められる程度の女ならば愛を語るに値しない。
Krauss, your father is completely irredeemable, man. Kinzo, holy hell, you're just done.
鎖で縛ってでも逃がしたくないと思うほどに苦しくなる女。そこまでに至ってこそ我が生涯を捧げるに値する愛である。お前にそれを別れとは言わぬよ。
Kinzo, you should just...
私は誰にも縛れない。縛られない。愛されたいんじゃないの。愛したいの。私もゴールドスミスと同じよ。だからよくわかるわ。あなたの愛の狂気。
愛と狂気は紙一重というわけかね。実に旗迷惑な話だ。
Kinzo is like an obsessed yandere, but of the opposite sex.
しかし、あっさり所在地が分かったのは大きいわ。詳しい経緯は後で聞くけど、南條先生はここをご存知なのね。
はい、そこの廊下がクアドリアンの地下通路ならば、あの先をまっすぐ行けば長い地下道になり、それをずっと歩けば屋敷に戻れるはずだ。
この鉄格子さえ何とかできれば屋敷に帰れるってことね。
お父さん、私たちをどうするつもりですか？
すでに宣告した通り、お前たちは後の晩のための生贄である。都合よく人数も5人。えぐりて殺す5人の人質にぴったりであろう。
なるほど。私たちも年貢の納め時というわけですか。
やがてはな。だが今はそのために訪れたのではない。安心せよ。それに言ったはずだ。もしも孫たちの誰かが我が全てを継承するにふさわしいと認められたなら、この儀式は中断する。つまりお前たちは命拾いをするというわけだ。
Kinzo's voice actor has been very good.
お子さんたちに何をするつもりですか？次期当主にふさわしいかどうかテストを与える。その結果、私をうならせる者が一人でもいたならば儀式は中断する。
ふさわしい者がいなかったら子供たちはどうするつもりですか？
それを心配する必要はない。どうせ先に生贄とされるのはお前たちだ。その後のことなど知ったことではなかろうに、お前たちは自らの命運を自らの子供たちに委ねるのだ。お前たちが産み教え育ててきた結晶が子供たちだ。お前たちの命運を委ねるに実にふさわしい存在のはず。
Kyrie, what does Kyrie think of this?
そう心配そうな顔をするなよ、クラウス。
Imagine having Asuma's son be in charge of your life.
お前の自慢の100億の価値のある娘を信じろよ。
まったくね。子供は親の結晶よ。親の命運を預けるにふさわしいわ。お父様にとってもね。
肝の据わった女だ。ルドルフにはもったいない。
Oh man。
キリエさん、あまり挑発しない方がいい。
同感だ。今は耐えよ
う。そうね。どうせ私たちはまな板の上の恋よ。今さら何もできやしない。
私に対し威勢のいい口を叩くことはできるがな。嫌いではないぞ。そういう女は。ベアトリーチェも初めはそういう女だった。
親方様、そろそろ本題を。さっきから脱線しまくりです。
おお、そうであったな。すまぬすまぬ我が友よ。それでは本題に入ろう。そのために電話を用意しておいたのだ。シャノン、知恵が回るな。もう隠さなくてもよいぞ。それは私が用意させたのだ。
失礼いたしました。
Oh. Shannon quickly withdrew herself, and the telephone was revealed.
クラウスよ。ゲストハウスの孫たちに電話をかけるがよい。そして我がテストを、試練の始まりを彼らに告げるのだ。
This is weird. Run off a motion for Krauss to pick up the receiver.
嫌だと言ったら。
ほほう。取引の余地がどこにあるというのか。お前が電話をせぬというなら、孫たちにはチャンスさえも与えぬ。後ろ宮家はこれにて終わり。お前たちは直ちに生贄だ。
直ちに生贄なら幸運よ。あなたたちの眼前で子供たちを先に生贄にされた方が辛いと思うけれど。
Her face.
が
Leah.
生贄の順番は親方様が決めます。勝手なことを言わないように。
Why is Virgilia so
リア
bashful?
今私の名前を縮めようとして詰まったでしょ。
してません。
Oh, okay.
だから勝手に人の名前を略さないように。
女は実に
かしましいですな。
Oh man. My mission to the world 12 years later. October 1998. The clinic Ange had opened and later passed on to his son still existed on Ninjima. This aged doctor was not just his son, but the atmosphere about him was very different.
わざわざお越しくださり、誠に申し訳ないのですが、特にお話しすることはありません。
Nanjo Masayuki. Nanjo's son was said that very indifferently.
あの島の事故がワイドショーなどで非常に不謹慎に取り上げられて以来、後ろ宮市の主治医であり友人でもあった父にも大変心外な関心が多数寄せられました。そのいずれもが何の根拠もなく、また父のそれまでの業績を汚すものでした。私はそれら全てについて未だに強く憤慨しています。
無理もないことと思います。私も同じようなものですので、私など6つの時から延々です。
そうでしたね。これは失礼。
The doctor finally remembered that Ange was also a victim that had been exposed to the same curious eyes as he had been.
そんなあなたなら当時の件にもう関わりたくないという私どもの気持ちもお分かりでしょう。あれは不幸な事故でした。それを事件だと騒ぎ立てたがるのは無責任なテレビと雑誌だけです。彼らの態度には心底うんざりさせられますよ。
Nanjo had been bathed with attention for being one of Shiromiya Kinzo's few friends. Because of that, there was also possibly aggressive and persistent rush amongst the witch hunters and the press to use Nanjo's son as well, a surviving relative, as a source of information. The doctor went on and on, criticizing the press indignantly.
お気持ちよくわかります。私生活に至るまで監視を受け、プライバシーも肖像権も、果ては人権さえも認められてたかわからない私ですから、そのやり場のないお怒り、よくお察しできます。だからこそ、私の人生をここまで台無しにしたあの事件は、一体何だったのか。それでここへ来ました。私も、あなたと同じ当事者です。雑誌記者でも、インタビュアーでもありません。そこを誤解しないでください。私は道楽でこんなところまで来たんじゃない。私を見下すのもいい加減にしてください。あの事件で狂わされた人生の傷跡比べをするならば、私とあなたでは比べ物にもならない。
Ange spoke sharply. The doctor, who hadn't imagined he would be taken back in such a forceful manner, couldn't help but fall silent. From Ange's perspective, the doctor was whining over nothing. She really didn't want to be looked down upon. It was about time to let him understand how many days had passed for her before arriving on this island. The doctor realized that he said something wrong and remained silent for a while, looking uncomfortable.
当時のことを思い出すのは苦痛でしょうが、ご存知のことがあったら何でも教えてください。もちろん口外はしません。私は私の人生に決着をつけるために今日ここへ訪れています。私は18です。あの事件は私の人生の12年を奪った。そしてこれからも奪い続けるでしょう。私は6歳のあの日からずっと暗闇に放り込まれたままなんです。そんな私でも知る権利がないとおっしゃるんですか。
いや、失敬。たちの悪い連中ばかりが来ていたので、私もつい身構えてしまったようです。失敬したのをお詫びします。わかりました。他言無用を誓っていただけるなら何でもお話しします。
ありがとう先生。ではお願いします。何でも結構です。
知っての通り、父は後ろ宮市の主治医であると同時にチェスを通じた友人同士でもありました。その親交は後ろ宮市が六軒島に移り住んできた当時からのとても長いものでした。
どのくらい仲が良かったのですか。
相当だったようです。チェスの縁で先方の屋敷に厄介になることも少なくなかったようです。私の口から言うのもなんだが、後ろ宮氏は非常に気難しい方でした。そして父はそんな人間と付き合うのに長けた非常におおらかな人だった。孤独な後ろ宮氏にとって稀な友人であったことは想像に難しくないでしょう。
当日は親族会議でした。後ろ宮家の親族会議は資産やその運用などについて厳しく問われるさながら経営会議のようなものだったとされています。そのような席にまで出席を求められるほどに南條先生は信頼を得ていたわけですね。
父は純朴な医師であり、後ろ宮家のような富豪の財産運用について助言できるような立場にあったとは思いません。おそらく当時の後ろ宮氏は健康状態が優れられなかったでしょうから、その買い添えとして呼ばれていたのでしょう。親友の父ならおそらく口も固く、親族会議上の秘密もきっと漏らさないと信頼されていたに違いない。
Does Ange know of Kinzo's having little time to live and the financial troubles that the siblings were in? Does she know about that? I'm wondering about
当
that
時の
now.
後宮金蔵はかなり健康状態が悪かったのでしょうか。カルテが残っていたりはしますか。
事故の当日はカルテを持参していたのでしょう。後ろ宮氏のカルテは残念ながらフォルダごと失われています。父のクラン家ですし、私も詳しいことは分かりません。
事件の前後、何か気になるようなことはありました？
あるにはあります。ですが非常に誤解を招きそうなのであまり言いたくはありません。
何ですか？それを教えてください。
For a while, the doctor beat around bush, but after saying that much, he wouldn't be able to fool Angie by dodging the subject. He eventually gave in, and after making Angie swear herself to secrecy again, told her.
実は あの事故の数日後に私の自宅に郵便が届いたのです。
郵便？
それはとても奇妙な郵便でした。差出人が私になっているのですが、それは身に覚えのないものでした。何者かが私の名を語って出したということです。宛先は北海道の礼文島。北方領土の話を抜きにすれば日本の最北端の島です。その宛先人がなんと礼文島の住所ではありますが、父の名前だったのです。
The recipient was apparently a residence, but the name was my father's.
しかし送付先住所が間違っているらしく、住所不明の付箋が貼られて、差出人である私のところへ戻ってきたわけです。
What the hell? It was really a strange tale. Wait, so a letter in your name was sent to Hokkaido and the recipient was your father. But then it returned to you. Nanjo's son's name was written as the sender. However, he said he hadn't mailed the letter. In short, it meant that someone had faked his name and sent it. The destination was Nanjo Teramasa on Hokkaido Ribbons Island. But the lot number written on it didn't exist, so the local post office had been unable to deliver it, and instead sent it back to the sender's Nanjo's son.
中身は？
本当に他言無用でお願いします。私も非常に迷惑しているんです。かといって捨てるわけにもいかず。
Was it gold? Was it a bar of gold? The doctor stood up and faced the bookshelf. There was packed a group of dictionaries that could have only been ornamental, meant to make it very clear the owner was an intellectual. When he pulled several volumes off from there, a large brown envelope peeked out from behind them. He took that out and tossed it to the desk. Oh, so it's not a bar. Okay, I thought he had a bar of gold. It had been carefully sealed with this cellophane tape, and its faded color and dryness made it clear that it had been sealed 12 years ago.
くれぐれも他言無用でお願いします。
Being so persistent, it was annoying. The doctor removed the seal with a paper knife. Then, when he tilted the envelope, an already opened mail envelope spilled out. The envelope had a weight to it, hinting there was something other than a letter inside. The recipient was certainly Nanjo Teramasa. Just seeing that was a huge shock. Following that incident, Nanjo's corpse had not been found, and he had eventually been treated as dead after going missing under extraordinary circumstances. And despite that, this letter addressed to a Nanjo in Hokkaido existed. Once one could almost take this as a sign that he had faked his own death and escaped to the Hokkaido.
南條先生は本当に北海道に存在を？あるいは同姓同名の人物が北海道に？
父が何かの事情で事故を逃れ、北海道で存命していたのだとしたら、私たち家族にとっては事情に関わらず嬉しいことです。私も初めはその可能性を考えました。しかし、この封筒の送付先住所は存在しないのです。つまりこの封筒は届くはずのない郵便なのです。
送付者が正しい住所を書き損じた可能性は？
もちろん否定はできません。ですが、住所の番地を見る限り、どうもそうは思えないのです。
What's the number? Wait,
北海道礼文島礼文郡礼文町 1-2-34-567。
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Let me pause for a second to record that number. So I've recorded the number, and it's 567. It's not the number that was on episode 3. It was not. Episode 3 was 0715. Up until Ribbon City, it's fine, but I just couldn't wipe away the feeling that the sequential number after it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, was a little insincere. Oh, I didn't. It felt like a fake number that some kid had made up.
おそらく明らかに存在しない住所をデタラメに書いたのでしょ この封筒は初めから存在せず届くはずのない住所に送付されたと考えるのが自然だと思います。
If the destination address doesn't exist, mail is generally returned to the sender. But even after the case of an incomplete address, the local post office will still cautiously and to the best of its ability research to find whether the sender's intended destination exists. When they still can't find it, the mail is sometimes returned after an investigation of several days. It seemed that the same thing had happened with this envelope, and the stamp was postmarked on October 3rd. It was postmarked on Nijima. Nijima was a long way from Riban Island. On top of that, the destination was also nonsensical. It had taken more than a week for the mail to be returned. In other words, there was probably a high chance that having the envelope returned to the sender after an unfixed amount of time had been the goal from the very beginning. Would I do something like that? Even before asking why it had been sent, this envelope was already wrapped in mystery. Is it a Kinzo envelope?
中身は?
どうぞ。
After getting the doctor's permission, I tilted the already opened envelope. From the inside came a small folded letter and a small key with a number plate attached. Then a magnetic card slid out. A1112. Oh god. A1112 was engraved on the key's number plate. I didn't know what it meant. Let me record that. The magnetic card was pitch black and had gold characters engraved in it. Members was written in English. The jet black gold letter card design made it feel like something very high class. But of course I didn't have a clue what kind of card it was just from that. I unfolded the letter. Its contents were extremely brief and only had the following rows. And only the following was written. Oh! Oh! Oh, shit. That's the same as the third. Holy hell, that's the same as the third episode. Stupefaction. Also written on the name of a certain massive bank known throughout Japan, as well as the words Central Branch. That was all.
これは?
貸金庫のカードと鍵、そして暗証番号でした。それも普通の貸金庫ではない。特別な顧客のみに許されているらしい不気味な貸金庫でした。
What is happening? After he finished putting his affairs in orders following his father's funeral, he had visited the bank. Pen and a key and card. There was no doubt that something of great importance was kept there. He had been naturally curious about what it might be. At first, he hadn't known what to do. The card wasn't something he'd owned in the first place. When he mustered up his courage and showed the card to a bank clerk, he was then switched to a clerk of clearly high status and was guided to a large vault on the 4th basement. The security on the way there was strict. The doctor had himself stored valuable items such as real estate, transcripts, and a safe deposit boxes before. But this was something on a whole different level.
私の使っている貸金庫の手続きと違い、カードと暗証番号、そして鍵を持っているならば、本人確認は行われないというシステムでした。ですが、とにかく厳重な金庫室で、その物々しさに怯えました。こんなところに預けざるを得ない、どんな物騒なものが待ち受けているのかと。
それで？
カードをリーダーに通すと、暗証番号の入力を求められました。そしてそこにある8桁の数字を入力すると認証され、金庫室への入室が認められました。すごい光景でしたよ。まるで SF 映画のような世界だった。薄暗い銀色の広大な部屋にびっしりと金庫の扉が埋め尽くされているのです。
He had entered that room along with the clerk. It seemed that as soon as the card was read, the vaults he had a right to were determined, so that the safes he could open were lit with a green light, while those he couldn't open were lit with a red one.
A11 はそれらの金庫のうちの一つを示すものでした。ちなみにそれ以外の金庫にもずらりと緑ランプが点灯していました。20個以上はあったと思います。
What the hell?
あるいは他の一角にももっとあったのかも。いずれにせよ、私の鍵は A11 にのみ。
Gold, maybe? Maybe that Oh my god.
他の金庫の中身を確かめる術はありませんで
Does
した
Eva know
が
about this? I mean, it was engraved in the door. As the clerk watched, the doctor had unlocked and opened the safe. When he did, a safe drawer like a large cabinet had opened, and an expensive-looking duralumin case picked out. That was carried into a separate room while the first time the clerk left, and he was introduced to the contents.
現金でした。
Not... Oh god, what the hell?
現金どれほど？
新札の100万円の束はちょうど厚みが1センチになると聞いたことがあります。それがこれだけのジュラルミンケースの中にびっしり詰められていたのですから、多分1億はあったでしょう。
20 versus 100 million.
数えたわけではないからわかりません。
Wait, 20 versus 100 million is 2 billion.
ですら触れませんでしたから、私はすぐに直感しました。これは危険な金だと。
2 billion in cash. It isn't normal to store a whole 100 million in cash in a case like safe like that. It's much easier to deal with it if you put it into an account and turn it into numbers. When someone is unable to do that, then it's clear that there's something wrong with that cash.
私は頭が真っ白になり、すぐに関わり合ってはならないと直感しました。
それで一切手をつけなかった。
12 years?
そのまま施錠し直し、元の金庫に預けて立ち去りました。この鍵やカードも捨てようと思いましたが、何が起こるかわからない。そのため誰にも内緒で12年もの間、本棚の裏に隠し続けてきたのです。
That's like 200 million in no, that's 20 million.
あれが何の金だったのか、私にも未だにわかりません。
I mean, is it?
この封筒をお借りすることはできますか？
いえ、この場で見るだけにしてください。
わかりました。ではちょっと失礼します。調べ物を。
I took an ancient's grimoire from the knapsack and sat down. Then I opened a page with the paragraph Beatrice had hidden into an ancient and compared the handwriting on both. There was no mistake about the characteristic handwriting. The one who had sent this 100 million yen in cash was Beatrice herself. Oh. Oh god. But what was it? Something's bugging me. What is it? What could be? What could it be?
ええ。そんな郵便物が確か届いた気がしますわ。母ちゃん、あれはどこにしまったっけな？
Who the fuck are you? The same envelope and contents had been sent to Kumasawa's son, who had once lived with her. He had been busy in the days since, and seemed to have forgotten about it while running around all over the place. However, its strange contents had been apparently stayed in his memory, and he remembered as soon as Ange mentioned it to him. After a bit of a wait, his thin-lipped wife found the envelope, complaining, complaining that he always forgot where he put things right away. The modus operandi from the sender and recipient was the same as Nanjo's son. The sender was made out to be Kumasawa's son, and the recipient was Kumasawa Chiyo. The destination address was in the Okinawa Prefecture, Yama Country, Yonaguni City, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yonaguni Island was the westernmost tip of Japan, and the lot name was the exact same sequential number that had apparently been chosen without much care. I was certain the envelope was definitely sent with the goal of having it be returned to the sender. Its contents were exactly the same. A letter with a pin and the mains branch written on it, a magnetic card, a key with an attached number plate. The inscription on the number plate was A113. The number right after the one on the key had been sent to Nanjo. Most likely inside the vault was the same kind of duralumin case, packed with 100 million yen in cash. So rewards for A job
死
well
んだお
done.
袋がメイドから送ってきたような気がしてね。中身もよくわからんし、薄気味悪いんで、ずっとほったらかしにしてて、今日まですっかり忘れてたんですわ。お嬢さんはこれが何かご存知なんですかね？ひょっとして、あんたんとこにも同じものが？
どうしたんです？エンジ様。ウリュウ、頭痛？ごめん。頭が痛い。刺さってる。知ってるって何を？
The same?
まさかこの封筒エンジ様のところにも？
Did the Smadera family get it? I remembered. A strange envelope was also sent to me 12 years ago. After losing my entire family, I was depressed. It was a really strange thing to come into mail, so I still had a faint memory of it. It was a strange letter which I had no memory of sending, but which had me as the sender. I forgot the destination address, but the name of the recipient had been Oshiramiya Rudolph, my father. I remember how disturbed I was when I got the letter. I thought it was from father. I opened it up and found a key and a card I didn't really understand. I felt let down and threw it away somewhere, I think. Where did I put that envelope? I probably lost somewhere in the chaos that followed. By now, I had no way of checking its contents. Oh, ever? I have a general idea. I'm sure the contents were the same. Without doubt, there had been a key and a card and a note with a pin inside the envelope.
ベアトリーチェ、これは何のつもりよ。あいつは全ての遺族にこんなふざけた金をばらまいたというの？死んだ後も愚弄するなんて許せない。
ウリュウ、エンジェ。
Sakutaro acted nervously. As I looked down his worrying face, my agitation began to cool off, bit by bit.
ごめんなさい。ベアトリーチェ憎しは今に始まったことじゃないわ。あの6歳の日に
Money in a
もうすでに
bank
あの魔女と縁があったことに驚きと怒りを
instead
感
of
じただけよ。
gold.
この12年間エンジ様はずっとベアトリーチェ様の呪縛にとらわれてきた。これがそのまさに呪縛の証となるのかもしれません。ですがどうかしっかりそれを打ち破るための旅でもあるはずです。
Magnetic cards.
頭に血を上らせたって何の役にも立たないわ。冷静に考えなくちゃ。これはどういうことなの？遺族に1億円をばらまく意味は何？挑発だとでも言うの？ベアトリーチェめ。
エンジェ、落ち着いて。
So none of the relatives used the money.
ウリュウ。
Sakutaro buried his head in my stomach. He urged me to stay calm. I took another deep breath and started thinking.
この封筒の送付はつまりベアトリーチェによる事件の計画性を裏付けるものかしら。
消印は親族会議の直前、そしてわざと時間をかけて返送されてくるように仕組まれている。事件の後に届くようにしたかったということかな。
うん、そうなるわ。でも少し疑問もあるの。なぜこんな不確実な方法で？
不確実？
ねえ、だって何日で郵便が戻ってくるかなんて事前には想像もできないじゃない。郵送先の郵便局が調査し送付先不明と判断し返送するまでの期間なんて普通は想像もできない。
そういえばそうだね。ちゃんと到着の期日を決めてそういう郵便で出した方が確実なのにね。ウリュウ。まあでも前日に投函したんならどんなに早く戻ってきてもきっと月曜日以降の到着になったでしょうし、死者からの手紙を気取りたかったんじゃないかしら。
死者からの手紙確かにね。あれは驚くし嫌な気持ちになるわよ。死んだ家族の名前が表に大きく書かれている郵便物が物々しい付箋付きで郵便受けに放り込まれているんだから。でも私は何か腑に落ちないわ。私だったら期日指定郵便にする。ひょっとしたら想定しない日に届くかもしれないという不安定さが私にはどうしても理解できないの。
ウリュウ。でも確かにそういうのベアトらしいかなって思う。
え、あなたベアトのことわかるの？
ちょっとしかお話ししたことないけど、 でもベアとならこういうことをするかなってのがなんとなくわかるの。
She's fickle and leaves
マモ
things
も
to the
なん
roll
と
of
な
the
く想
dice.
像がつかない？ベアとってこういういたずら好きだよね。
確かにそうかも。ベアドリージュ様なら死者からの手紙みたいな悪質ないたずらはやりかねないと思います。
それだけじゃなくて絶対確実な方法じゃなくてちょっぴり不確実な方法の方をベアトリーチェは面白がるの。
She doesn't like Lambda Delta.
不確実な方法を面白がる。
She doesn't like Lambda Delta at all. I remember Maria and Echen's diary. It had described playing with Beatrice very often. During those times, Beatrice sometimes played pranks on the adult relatives of Maria. But those pranks always had a touch of witches' aesthetics. Which was that they were more interesting when they were uncertain. One day, Maria, Nechen, and Beato decided to wind up a minicar she had brought for a prank. It was a popular toy at the time, and if you made the minicar back up, it would wind up the springs on the tires, and when you let go, it would race forwards. It had wound up that minicar and set it behind a milk jug. In other words, the prank was that if you lifted the milk jug, the minicar would jump forwards and surprise whoever did it. Hoping that someone would get caught in this prank, Onecha and Bieto had watched the adults from the shadows for their whole tea time. They were looking forward to seeing someone get caught by it. But no one moved the trapped milk jug, and the trap ended in a misfire. But Onecha had done murder. We should have put it somewhere where it would definitely cause someone. Bieto apparently said this. She said, "Most interesting and thrilling traps are those where you don't know who will get caught, or if anyone will get caught at all." It's probably true, you wouldn't get this kind of excitement from a trap that would certainly go off. Similar accounts occurred in multiple places, making it possible to guess that the witch called Beatrice had a fickle character and loved a random thrill. A fickle person is very hard to deal with. I can't spin the chessboard around to find out what the witch from 12 years ago was planning. As Ange examined these, her gaze darted from place to place. Then she suddenly showed interest in the wall. There, several framed pictures were hung. Many of them were commemorative photos from when the relatives of the Kumasawa family gathered or went to somewhere to play, and Kumasawa was in several. And she still wore that smile that made it so you could almost hear her lighthearted ho 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 laugh. It's part of my distant memory, but I definitely remember that she was this sort of cheerful old lady.
熊沢さんは事件の直前に変わった様子はありましたか？
いやー、いつも通りに見えたな。親族会議はピリピリするから辛い辛いと漏らすのはいつものことでしたし。
これは？
Among the several frames, there was one that had something other than a picture of people in it. It was a picture of an enlarged relief door, and this was a picture of an enlarged relief of a door from a Western-style house or something. You couldn't see anything interesting in the subjects in particular, which had actually bugged me a bit, as I wondered why anyone who had gone to all the trouble of taking it. As I got closer, I realized that some characters had been written with a pen.
ああ、それはお袋の形見分けでもらってきた写真ですわ。
Ooh, the photo of I need to know.
多分例の黄金伝説に関係したやつではないかと。
魔女の碑文ですか？10トンの黄金の隠し場所を示すと噂される。熊沢さんも挑んでおられたんですね。
So she got that it was in the chapel.
でもこれは碑文じゃない。初めて見るものです。
There was an arch above a western-style door, and that's where the relief was. English words were engraved there, and that seemed to be what the picture was focused on. The pen writing appeared to be a translation into Japanese.
この扉は1000兆分の1の確率でしか開かない。
Quadrillion to 1.
1000兆分の1の確率でしか祝福されない。
Quadrillion to 1 quadrillion.
知らないわ。こんな文章碑文にもお姉ちゃんの日記にも出てこない。
Didn't I... So...
お袋の遺品の中に碑文の謎解きに挑戦してると思われる写真やノートが結構出てきたんですわ。お袋も案外そういうのが好きだったんだな。なんでも10トンの金塊が隠されてたって噂だ。そりゃお袋も夢中になるはずですわ。
In both Maria and Achen's diary and in her grimoire, there was a description of the witch's epitaph. And I talk about how a ceremony to open the door to the Golden Land, Beatrice's resurrection ceremony, Beatrice's succession ceremony, on and on. Maybe the most interesting one was the last part about it being a succession ceremony. According to Beatrice, if you were able to solve the witch's epitaph, you would receive not only 10 tons of gold and the Ushiramiya family's inheritance, but her own magical power and name, as well as the title of Golden Witch. And then Ava solved that. Amongst the Ushiramiya family household at the time, the witch's epitaph was thought of as a difficult quiz, which the family head Kinzo had arranged for to choose the successor. But with the mariage sorcerer's interpretation, the questionnaire was Beatrice herself, and she had posed the question in part to choose her successor. There were slight discrepancies in the details of the two interpretations. Either way, its ominous contents brought to mind a bloody serial murder, and both of the message bottles drew a tale of a crime following that pattern. If I could solve the witch's epitaph now, 12 years later, I wonder if I could expose some plot made back then. I tried to solve it many times myself, but I never did have a clue what it meant. It seems that many witch hunters tried as well. I also found theories like the La Plata theory and the Enora theory in certain books. However, neither of those theories were conclusive.
他にも資料が？
あると思うけど、兄弟で適当に分けたからな。誰が何を持ってるやらさっぱりですわ。申し訳ない。
この熊沢さんが撮影した英文だけ読むと、めったに開かれない開かずの扉という印象を受ける。でもこれは屋敷のどこかしら。光の具合から屋外みたいだけど、熊沢さんはこの中にその黄金が隠されていると睨んでたのかしら。
さあ、いずれにせよ六軒島の屋敷のどこかでしょうな。お袋の預金口座には残念だが黄金を発見したと思えるようなお金は入ってませんでしたよ。さすがに見つからんかったんでしょうな。
Ava found it. The Golden Witch Beatrice gave 10 tons of gold to Kinzo, which meant that the witch was the true owner of the gold. Beatrice was the owner of the vast fortune of the Ushiramiya family. The witch holding this vast wealth had massacred the humans of Rokkenjima on that day, sending large amounts of money to the surviving relatives like it was a game. Like hell, it's a letter from the dead. It's a desecration of the dead. I was once again convinced. When my family died on that island that day, they didn't go to heaven. They're being trapped by the witch even now and are being desecrated and tormented for all eternity. The last place Ange visited was a store in the region between their housing district and the retail stores was a signboard saying Marufuku's Sleep Shop. Sleep Shop? There lived the man who had been the boat captain of the ferry boat to the Rokkenjima at the time. Even he, who had once lived as a man of the sea, had retired after contracting serious illness and was now taken care of at the house of his son and his son's wife.
よく覚えてる。あんた、まだこんなに小さかった。立派になったな。そして、さぞや辛かっただろう。お前さんの気持ち、よくわかるぞ。
The former boat captain was in such high spirits that you couldn't really tell why he had retired in the first place. His memory seemed clear too, and he could remember the events of more than a decade ago well. Apparently even about how Ange had been at the time. Though he chatted on, was very helpful for Ange, but at the same time he also remembered the final family conference very well. And the fact that he remembered even details like Battler's fall madness on the boat was actually painful for her. It had been so back then as well, but even now, there was no public way to cross to Rokkenjima. It was necessary to make an individual request to an owner of the boat to make the voyage. I've been unable to arrange for a boat to Rokkenjima, so if he refused me, such a voyage would probably become hopeless.
わかってる。今、あの島に行きたがる船なんぞ、簡単には見つからんだろう。今じゃ六軒島と呼ばず、古い名前の悪食島と呼ぶ者までおる。
悪食島。
この辺りの船乗りじゃ、首を縦には振るまいな。
Like Demon Island or something. From the start, fishermen had feared Rokkenjima as an island of misfortune, and because of that incident 12 years ago, the fear had reached a peak. They respected the sea, feared it, and revered it. There were almost no sailors who would try to take a boat to the cursed island. Because of that, most of the witch hunters were unable to cross over Rokkenjima, and were limited to taking a trip around the island. Ironically, this had caused the sense of mystery surrounding Rokkenjima to increase even more, which had resulted in the propagation of the bizarre witch stories they loved so much.
船は出してもらえるでしょうか？
明日だけ返してもらう約束になっとる。最近はエンジンがだいぶご機嫌斜めらしいがな。かっ飛ばしてやるわい。
Former boat captain promised that tomorrow he would go back to his previous job and take his boat out to Rokkenjima. Now my method of transport to Rokkenjima is ensured. This is probably all I can do in Nijima. All that's left is tomorrow. On Rokkenjima, I'll reach the final destination of a journey that stretches back 12 years.
よかったね。これで島へ行けるようになったね。
Oh, the Sumadera will be there, I think. That fucking ought.
そうね。船を見つけるのは難しいと聞いていたから、船長が協力的で助かったわ。
She's gonna kill Ange there. Try to kill Ange there, I think.
船長にとっても12年前の事件は未だ抜けないトゲなんでしょうね。ウリュウ、船長さんも心の整理がつかなかったんだね、ずっと。そりゃそうでしょう。約束通り10月5日にあのじいさんが船を出してくれれば大勢が助かった可能性がある。ちょっと風が強いからといって船を渋らなければ。ウリュウ、そんなこと言っちゃダメだよ。船長さんもそれを今日までずっと苦しんできたはずだよ。
This whole conversation brings my theory that Mammon is just another personality of Ange, as well as Sakutaro. Sakutaro is the nice part, and Mammon is the greed and the bad feelings. The other sisters as well. Apparently, they truly had been right in the middle of a typhoon on October 5th. According to the boat captain, had known for certain that they'd been trapped by the typhoon if they headed to Rokkenjima on October 4th. But the family had been very persistent about the date of their conference, which had been determined beforehand. It was only natural. All of the relatives had been busy at that time, and they came to the family conference only after arranging their schedules beforehand. It was probably a situation where they couldn't easily push it back to the next week just because the typhoon was approaching. It wasn't the boat's captain's fault. Perhaps you could say that he wasn't so irresponsible that he could place the blame wholly on the typhoon. Certainly, just as these two said, that there's no doubt that the boat captain had been dragging the events of 12 years ago along with him this whole time. And by taking me, the last member of the Ushirimiya line, to the island and bringing me back safely, he might be trying to find some resolution for his past.
船は昼過ぎに帰ってくることになってる。それからあんたを六軒島へ案内するから、到着は夕方前になるだろう。電気も明かりもない島だ。あまり長いはできんぞ。その程度の上陸で、あんたの気は済むかね。
長い下から何かの気が済むというものでもありませんし、船を出してもらえるだけでも感謝します。
すまんな。
You need to go to Kuwadorian. that Ange needs to go to the hidden mansion as well as the chapel. She needs to go
わし
there.
が船を手放していなければケチなことを言わず好きなだけ島へ案内してやれるんだが
It's not like I have a goal of doing something particular on Rokkenjima, so I'll be there during the evening. The evening, which straddles the two different worlds of day and night, seemed almost like a borderline between this world and the next, or possibly in 1998 and 1986, and it felt like the most fitting time to visit Rokkenjima. It's not like I have anything in particular to do there. Just staying there for a few hours should be enough for me to find some closure. At that time, there was a small knock on the paper sliding door, and Amakusa stuck his head in, taking his watch. I nodded back and told him about how I had succeeded in reserving a boat for tomorrow.
それはよかった。そろそろ参りましょう。船長、明日はよろしくお願いします。
ああ、任せておけ。お前さんたちの難儀な事情も聞いとる。わしも当時のワイドショーを見ていて、面白半分に事件をかき回す連中に虫唾が走っとったもんだ。協力は惜しまんよ。
ありがとうございます。それでは明日お昼にこれ船代に。
Angie took a wad of 10,000 yen bills from her pocket. The boat captain should have noticed its thickness as well, but he paid absolutely no interest and shook his head.
わしはお前さんに感謝しとるよ。これは天のお導きだ。あんたを六軒島へ連れて行き、そして無事に連れ帰る最後のチャンスをくださったんだ。わしは金蔵さんに任されていた最後の仕事を今ようやく終えることができる。
Final job Kinzo entrusted me with.
だからあんたには感謝してる。
Final job.
「金は当時の金蔵さんからたらふくもらってる。あんたから取れんよ。
Final job. Final job. Is anyone feeling a little bit creeped out here? Like I am? Final job.
ありがとうございます。
階段足元に気をつけてな。急だぞ。
I went down the steep staircase that was the exact opposite of accessible. It was getting hard to believe that it was actually a chest of drawers and a TV in the room upstairs. Most of the first floor was a bedding store with many futons piled up on each other. We weaved our way through the cramped futon shop. After cautiously checking around outside, Amakusa dashed out first and started up the car.
孫の部屋が空いとる。泊まって行っても構わんのに。見ての通り、布団なら有り余っとるぞ。
ありがとうございます。万一の時、ご迷惑はかけられませんので。
事情は知らんが、相当な厄介に巻き込まれてるようだな。うさんくさい連中が人探しをしていると噂になっとる。
Angie.
あんたのことじゃないのかね？
Angie. I think it's best that you go away. You don't... I think it's best for you to just take a flight overseas and just wait it out. This is really bad.
さあ。
Angie played dumb, but it looked as though the boat captain had guessed.
わしは六軒島を目指す客人を送り届け、そして迎えに行き、連れ帰ることが仕事だった。その仕事を12年前に中断したまま、まだ終えてない。だからわしは、あんたのおかげでその仕事をようやく終えることができるんだ。だから、わしにその仕事を終えさせてくれよ。わかってるな。
Oh no, Angie.
ええ、別に私は死にに行くんじゃない。
Oh, Angie. Part of me does feel that if I could die on that island, I should be able to go to where my family is. I've finally become aware of it. I might have been planning to die on that island. I might have come all this way, heading towards Rokkenjima, in search of a place to die. Both Captain had guessed that as well. That's why he repeatedly told me not to die.
ええ、死にません。約束します。そもそも私、どうして六軒島に行かなくてはならないのかの目的さえ、未だにあやふやなんですから。
いや、目的はきっとある。あんたにないなら、それは彼らにあるんだ。島があんたを呼んだ。だからあんたはここまで来たんだ。
そうかもしれませんね。
So that's what I was getting so worried, Angie.
私は呼ばれたのかもしれない。
I was called. For what reason? For them. Father, mother, Battler Oni-chan, and Maria Oni-chan. Or maybe the Golden Witch, Beatrice. What is on Rokkenjima? And what will I achieve? Even though tomorrow is finally almost here, I still haven't been able to understand my own mission. Oh man. There was the sound of a car stopping in front of the store, and a short honk could be heard.
それでは明日、失礼します。
Oh man. Winding between the stacks of futons in the cramped store, I was about to go outside, and my feet stopped.
どうしたね？
あれは？
あれ？はて、何の話だね？
What? Trembling all over, I pointed at it. But no matter how much the boat captain squinted, he noticed absolutely nothing in that direction that should have been surprised me. That must mean...
ありえない。どうして？ウリュウ、エンジェ、どうして？どういうことなのこれは？私にだってさっぱりだわ。そんなバカなことってあるの？これは魔法なの？奇跡なの？ええ。
What are you seeing?
これは運命よ。
Oh, I need to...
私は今理解したわ。
Come on, give me.
私の使命だったのよ。ウリュウ、私には何が何だか。
What is happening? Shaking her point in the thin darkness inside the store and froze up.
どうしたんだね？何があるんだね？わからん。わしにはわからん。あんたには何が見えてるのかね？
ありがとう、
Without love,
船長。
it cannot be seen.
全部これは運命だったんです。ここに私が訪れることさえ運命だった。これが私が六軒島へ行く目的で使命なんです。
What the hell are you seeing?
エンジさん、どうしました？
I need to know.
わしにもさっぱりわからん。
エンジさん、どうしました？トラブルですか？
お嬢ちゃんが暗がりを指さしたまま固まっちまったんだ。
エンジさん、大丈夫ですか？何が見えるんですか？
あなたたちには見えないの？それよ、それ見えないの？
見えるのはただの陳列棚です。
Normal display.
誰も言いやしませんぜ。
ウリュウ、エンジェ。
Ah, this is so frustrating.
何が何だかわからないよ。これは夢なの？
Is it like something of Maria's, maybe?
どういうことなの？エンジェ。
Sakutaro lifted his face towards Ange. From her eyes slid a single tear.
理解したわ。お姉ちゃん、そしてベアトリーチェ。ウリュウ。
This is magic, isn't it? What did you see? Final family conference. Dead angle.
よく聞きなさい。
Once again, there was a call from Krauss to the guest house, and the message was that Kinzo wanted to hold a test to see if the grandchildren had the qualifications to become his successor.
当主様は次期当主をお父さんたちの兄弟からではなく孫たちの中から選びたいとそうおっしゃっている。
I'm going, man. I'm fucking going. Not to the end, but still. From Krauss's restrained style of speech, Jessica realized, as his daughter, that he was being forced to speak. And she was forced to realize that the hostages were being exposed to danger even now. And that if they refused this test, there was a possibility that the hostages would be harmed.
それで私たちはどうすればいいの？
待て。
Krauss put down the receiver, then looked at the grinning Kinzo on the other side of the bars. Kinzo gave his next order.
テストの前に無関係なものを排除しなくてはならない。ゴーダと熊沢がそこにいるのであろう。テストに干渉されては邪魔なのでな。彼らをゲストハウスより追放せよ。追放ですか？バラ庭園に園芸倉庫があったはず。そこへゴーダと熊沢を閉じ込めて施錠せよ。
You're insane, man.
まずはそれからだ。直ちに遂行するように伝えよ。我が武具たちが監視する。疑わしい行為に及べばテストは直ちに中止し、お前たちすべてを生贄として処刑する。わかりました。
Do not do it.
もしもしジェシカ、今から父さんの言うことをよく聞きなさい。
Krauss relayed the orders to lock up Gohda and Kumasawa.
どんなテストをなさるつもりですか？
実に簡単なテストだとも。孫たちの覚悟を見せてもらうだけだ。さて、どんな結果を見せてくれるのか。
Looking disgusted, Kiri watched Krauss, who was talking with the children. I hate it, but for now we cannot refuse orders. In this dungeon, a feeble resistance won't amount to anything. If we provoke him too much and drive him to a position where he might kill us, there will no longer be any way to stop this murderer. For now, the only choice left is to obey his rules without agitating him, all the while waiting for an opportunity. However, if we continue to obediently follow his commands, the children might be attacked in the so-called tests, and they might even lose their lives. Whether we feign obedience or try to resist, nothing will cause the situation to improve. Anyway, straining our eyes so that we don't let a single chance escape until the very end is the only resistance possible now. While telling herself this, Kyrie watched over Krauss as he delivered Kinzo's orders.
キリエさん、ここは辛抱しましょ
う。分かってるわ。悔しいけれど、今は待つしかない。この鉄格子さえ何とかできれば、私たちは屋敷へ戻ることができるんだから。
なんとかここを出られれば、試してみましょう。金蔵さん、頼みがある。
何か我が友よ。
金蔵さんが子供たちを試したいというのはよくわかった。金蔵さんの納得のいくようにするといい。金蔵さんの力がなければとっくに潰れていたかもしれない後ろ宮家だ。その担い手を慎重に選びたい気持ちよくわかる。それにそのための親族会議だ。私ら邪魔はせんよ。
お前の理解が得られて助かる。そうだ、これは親族会議なのだ。私が次期当主を選び決定する最後の親族会議なのだよ。
それでだが金蔵さん、ここはあまりに冷えすぎる。あんたのテストの邪魔はせんから、もう少し暖かい場所に移してもらうことはできんかね。
At Nanjo's words, the slight signs that Kinzo's mood had been improving were blown away. Nanjo was struck with a moment of silence as Kinzo gazed at him with dangerous eyes, as though appraising him.
確かにここは冷えますね。老体にはおつらいでしょう。親方様、上の部屋に移し替えても良いのでは。
それはできん。甘いぞ南條。お前は一手猶予を与えるような素振りで実に華麗に布石を打つではないか。その手には乗らんぞ。凍えるというなら真っ赤に焼けた石炭でも敷き詰めてやればよい。
申し訳ございません。
Leah tried to help out, but in the end, Kinzo would not comply.
あなたたちはおとなしいのね。その気になればこんな鉄格子簡単に破れるでしょう。
ここを破ったとて何もなりません。
確かにここを破ったならゴールドスミスのゲームが終わることを意味する。あなたたちも、そしてゲストハウスの人間たちも即座に金蔵の儀式の生贄となるでしょうね。でも案外あなたたちだけかもしれないわよ。この状況を打開できる力を持っているのは。黄金鏡にたどり着きたいんでしょ。叶えたい夢がいっぱいあるんでしょ。
ガープ、挑発はいけませんよ。これはあなたのゲームではない。親方様の、そしてお嬢様のゲームです。
どうしたロノウェイ。
いえいえ何も。捕虜とおしゃべりをしていました。お許しを。
Garp sent one final sneering smile at Cannon, then turned away. Cannon could only bite his lower lips and shake his fists.
くそ。よく頑張ったね。よく我慢したよ。
僕たちは無力だ。家具だから。
そうだね。私たちは無力。でも家具は必要とされることだって。そして愛されることだってあるよ。今の私たちは暗い地下室にしまわれているだけ。きっといつか誰かが愛してくれる。必要としてくれるから。だから今は挑発に乗らないで耐えようね。
お父さん、ゴーダたちを倉庫に閉じ込めるよう指示をしました。
They're gonna follow with it?
電話を切ってよい。
They're going to follow with it? Seriously?
シエスタ姉妹、孫たちがゴーダと熊沢を閉じ込めるのを監視せよ。もしも不審な動きがあるようならば、その時点で次期当主を選ぶテストは終了だ。
410 will definitely make sure. When Kinzo made his orders, the Chester sisters appeared behind him in a line.
了解であります。石膏は私がやる。556と410は両翼支援。
556 and 410 will cover both flanks.
45は全周警戒。
556は。
そうだった。すまない。
What?
いい子でした。だから私は嫌いに。いいやつは。
何をしているか、シエスタ姉妹。我が命令を遂行せよ。
556 556 556.
失礼しました。
0045 410 556.
では監視に向かうであります。出撃。
The Chester sisters erased their forms simultaneously. Nanjo and Kyrie had witnessed the instants they appeared and disappeared as if by teleportation, but they interpret this as moving in and out of the darkness in a way that only looked like teleportation. The two could only do nothing but rub their eyes.
さて、私はテストの準備をしよう。ロノウェイ、ガープ、お前たちには試験官を頼む。ワルギリアはこやつらを監視するように。何しろ我が家具が2人いる。一応は警戒せよ。
He glanced at Shannon and Cannon. Tightly closing her eyes, Shannon gave a silent bow and answered wordlessly, avoiding any unnecessary actions.
かしこまりました。注意します。
リーアの老体には寒くて辛くない？湯たんぽでも持ってくる？
うるさいです。早く追いきなさい。
Oh my god, her little fists. Oh, can you see? Wait. Oh, look at their little fists. Oh man, that's so cute. Gap.
さてさて、テストとは、そして試験官とは、今回のゲームは変わった試みですね。お嬢様を楽しませる展開になると良いのですが。
さあさあおいでなさい、ヤギの従者たち。
Ooh. Man, they're so buff. Virgilia began to call into the darkness, and from that spot, 3 massive goat-headed attendants suddenly appeared.
リーチェの眷属ね。便利だわ。しかも暖かそうだし。ああ、湯たんぽの代わりね。なら、ヤギより羊の方がいいんじゃない？
カシミヤ臓器のくせにうるさいですよ。彼らは賢くはありませんが、命令に忠実で強靭な頼れる従者たちです。
任せるぞ、我が友ワルギリアへ。残りの者は私と来い。
With a dignified gesture, Kinzo fluttered his cloak. Following him were Renova and Gop, as well as the 3 recently summoned Gohda attendants.
あなたたちは私と残るのですよ。ついていかないように。
The goats jumped in surprise and then came tottering back. Kyrie, who had been watching stunned as all this played out, couldn't help but snort.
愉快な部下ね。ゴールドスミス卿より死後の許可は与えられていませんよ。
She was probably embarrassed. Virgilia's Leah had spoken coolly, but Kyrie saw through that, and for a little while she couldn't restrain her muffled laughter. However, on the inside, Kyrie was surprised at the number of people Kinzo had with him. After all, including Kinzo himself, at least 10 enemies had already been spotted. The dungeons they were currently locked in was supposedly underneath the hidden mansion called Kuwadorian. Although this mansion had been whispered of, not even Krauss had known of its existence until today. Are there actually several facilities like this on Rokkenjima, where many unknown henchmen that only Kinzo knows of hide? Just how many humans are on Rokkenjima locked away by the typhoon? No, on the contrary. Were we the only ones under the impression that there were only 18 people on this island? Were we, who bickered over whether Beatrice existed or not, and worried about whether a 19-person existed or not, nothing more than frogs in a well on this island? No, wait, not only that. By now, are there actually more people on the enemy's side than on ours?
何が起こってるの？一体魔女？悪魔？魔法？それを信じろというの？おかしいのは私の目？それとも頭なの？頭がどうにかなりそうよ。
Mass murder by magic, demons forming and disappearing into thin air. Setting aside the enemy's numbers, how should we interpret the way things thrust before our eyes cannot be explained with the common sense of our world? Kyrie started to feel like she didn't know what was going on anymore, and while desperately battling the urge to abandon everything and give up, she grit her teeth and tried to hold on to her sanity. Obviously, Gohda and Kumasawa were quite unwilling to be locked in the Rose Garden shed, but they were threatened that if they resisted, the hostage safety could not be guaranteed. It was fairly hard to get them to agree. Once they started thinking that their safety might actually be guaranteed if the key to the garden storehouse was be handed to them after being shut inside, and when it was decided that the blankets and food would be carried in for them, they were finally convinced. They're gonna die inside. I'm sorry. That's just how it's gonna be.
ここは寒々しいですね。私たちはいつまでここに閉じ込められていればいいのでしょうか。
下手をすると月曜の朝まで丸々一昼夜はいてもらうことになるかもしれない。本当にお二人には申し訳なく思うよ。
George and Battler cleared a space on the floor, then spread the blankets there. They also left the canned food, crackers, and other light snacks they had brought.
月曜の朝までも二人でこの量じゃ辛いな。せめて厨房に言われたなら。
余計な場所には行くなと言われてる。私たちは監視されてるらしいしな。
A death's door. Oh, I'm sorry.
何もお力になれないことを申し訳なく思います。こんな時に皆さんのおそばにいてこその私どもなのに。
仕方ないです。
Can't be helped.
それより熊沢さんをよろしく頼みますね。何が起こるかわからない。いざという時は臨機応変に助けてほしい。そして何よりも無事でいてほしい。
ええ、分かっています。皆さんこそ気をつけてくださいね。今の親方様はまるで人の命をチェスの駒のように奪います。気をつけてください。
Gohda stared at the floor, even now unable to believe what had happened as he remembered that atrocity in the dining hall, and he hung his head in shame at his failure to fully describe that terror.
ありがとう。くれぐれも注意してくださいね、熊沢さんも。
ジョージさんたちもくれぐれもご用心なさってくださいね。もう私には何が何やらさっぱりわかりませんとも。
それじゃあ僕たちは行きます。行こう、バトラ君、ジェシカちゃん、ほらマリアちゃんも。
おー。
Looking at the pitiful expressions on the imprisoned pair's faces, it got really hard to close the shutter. We can't disobey. We're being watched. The shutter was brought down and locked. Then George walked towards the small window on the side of the storehouse. On that side there was a small lattice window that could only admit light and ventilation. It looked like something from a jail, making the two of them seem even more pitiable. On the other hand, it would hopefully protect them from Kinzo and his subordinates. He opened the window and called out.
大丈夫ですか？寒くないですか？
ええ。毛布をこんなにいただきましたからね。くるまっていればきっと平気ですよ。
石油ストーブとかを持ってくればよかったな。
ここじゃ換気できないからね。辛いだろうけど今は仕方がない。
Be careful of CO2 poisoning.
僕たちは人質を取られている。逆らえない。
畜生。なんとかキレイさんたちを救出することができれば。
聞かれてるかもしれないよ。ゴーダさん、これそのシャッターの鍵です。
George threw the key in through the tiny window.
確かにお預かりします。
Gohda took its key, showed it to Kumasawa, and placed it in his own pocket. There is only one key to the gardening shed shutter. That key was being held by the ones locked up inside it. It's gonna be the same thing that happened in episode 1. The children had kept it, and had it stolen from them by some chance that would do nothing but expose the lives of those in the shed to danger. And even with the key, the shutter could not be opened from the inside. Kinzo's demands were fulfilled this way. However, there was no longer any way to open the shed from the outside either. What? What the hell? This protected them. Kinzo had ordered that they be confined, and they could do nothing but trust that this cold closed room would protect them. Jessica watched this while holding Maria's hand, then looked over the thickets in the pitch-black rose garden. Somewhere in this darkness, somebody was hiding, watching to see whether we obeyed orders or not. course, when we pointed our flashlights out there, no suspicious silhouette appeared, but somebody was surely out there, hiding and watching. I was hit many times with an urge to scream at them, but I was able to hold that urge back through reason. The 4 children left the area, repeatedly looking back over their shoulders. The light from the faint light bulb in the gardening storehouse was seeping out slightly. I wonder if this insane incident will come to an end somehow, so that we can meet those 2 again. To George, who had closed the shutter himself, the resistance of the lock had made it feel as though he killed them with his own hands.
それでも俺たちは逆らえないんだよな。
テストだと。クソじじいめ、ふざけやがって。それで母さんたちが殺されて、父さんたちが捕まって、理解できねえぜ。ぶっ殺してやる。
大丈夫だよ、ジェシカお姉ちゃん。悲しくなんかないよ。
マリ
オ。もうすぐ魔女は蘇る。すぐに黄金鏡で会えるよ。
Don't hit
不謹慎な
Maria.
ことで笑うんじゃねえぜ。何が魔女復活の儀式だ。妄想はじい様の頭の中だけにしときゃいいものを大勢巻き込みやがって。こいつは高くつくぜ。
ゲストハウスに戻ろう。おじい様から電話があった際に不在だったらまずい。
不謹慎なことで笑うんじゃねえぜ。何が魔女復活の儀式だ。妄想はじい様の頭の中だけにしときゃいいものを大勢巻き込みやがって。こいつは高くつくぜ。畜生め。
I need Battler and Kinzo to interact. They haven't interacted a single time in the whole 4 episodes. Urged on by George, everyone began walking towards the guest house. At that moment, Jessica turned in a circle. Actually, he interacted with him in the final moments of episode 2. Right? Yeah. At that moment, Jessica turned in a circle, facing towards the darkness of the rose garden, and roared.
おい！誰か見てんだろ！ジジイに伝えとけ！絶対にぶち殺してやるってな！行こう。
Of course, there was no reply, only the howl of the wind and rain. The children returned to the guest house, while fearing that was what was waiting for them up ahead. After they left, from the exact point in the darkness that Jessica had yelled at, 2 rapid ears sprung up. Oh God.
45がすっとろいからバレたに。竜王様に怒られる。ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい。竜王様に言いつけるのは許してください。
黙れ、静かに。どうせハッタリだ。ゴーダと熊沢の監禁は確認した。任務完了。報告に戻るぞ。
I love 410. I love her so much.
連帯責任で人間と水だけの刑になりたいか。行くぞ。
Her face is just so good. The fact that they were being watched certainly seemed to be true, because when they returned to the cousins' rooms, turned on the lights, and lay down in their beds, the phone rang again. Earlier, Jessica had been answering the phone, seeing as this was her house. Now it was the eldest, George, who picked it up. This time, Kirie-san was on the other end of the line. George handed it to Battler out of consideration.
もしもし、キリエさんか。そっちは大丈夫なのか。
心配をありがとう。今のところは快適よ。ごめんなさい。死後は慎めと命令されてる。今から伝えることをよく聞いて。
The fact that they were hostages still hadn't changed. Kinzo, or one of his subordinates, was listening in to the conversation. Butler restrained the urge to talk about other things and focused on what Kyrie had to say.
テストはジェシカちゃん、ジョージ君、バトラ君、そしてマリアちゃんの順で行われるそうよ。
Oh.
順番に呼び出すから。
So order of sibling birth instead of order of grand. Oh my god, this is confusing. So Jessica, Krauss's daughter, George, Ava's daughter, Battler, Rudolph's, George, Ava's son, Battler, Rudolph's son, and Maria Rosa's. So in the other of the siblings, instead of the age. When someone's called out, they'll head to their designated location alone. Battler repeated it out loud so that the cousins listening in around him could hear.
ジェシカ、兄貴、俺、マリアの順で呼び出しがあるまで部屋にいろ。だな、わかった。マリアもなのかよ。9歳の子にまで。クソジジイは何を強いる気なんだ。畜生め。
後ろ宮家の命運はあなたたちに握られてるわ。頑張って。
うん。ああ。
Battler noticed the strange nuance in Kyrie's words. Oh god. Even without any blood connection, he could still understand thanks to the long-lasting bond they shared. At this point, it doesn't make sense to worry about the Oshiromiya family itself. That probably wasn't the message Kyrie wanted to send. She probably meant there's no way for us to escape from this dungeon, and we can only wait to be rescued. Our lives are in your hands. Something like that.
ああ、任せてくれ。どんなテストか知らねえが上等だぜ。受けて立ってやら。本気のテストなんだよな。マジにやっちまっていいんだよな。
ええ、本気のテストよ。おじい様も本気で試すつもりでいるわ。
ダメだな。全然ダメだぜ。死にかけの老いぼれが俺と本気。
Oh god, no! Battler is so good!
寝言は棺に入ってから言いやがれ。そこにいるジジイに言っとけ。次期当主は俺だ。その最初の仕事はてめえの面に鉄拳ぶち込んでやることだってな。
Oh man, Battler is so good. Even without Kyrie having to repeat it, Battler's powerful declaration of war reached Kinzo's ears.
バトラー、それは実に楽しみであるぞ。一度は後ろ宮の名を捨てた男が何を身につけ、何の境地に至って我が前に現れるというのか楽しみにしている。
Oh man, I need this so badly. I need Kinzo and Battler to interact. I need it. I need them to confront each other. I need it.
そう伝えよ。
Unfortunately, Kinzo's voice was not picked up by the receiver. Therefore, Kyrie spoke for him.
大いに上等だそうよ。いい？バトラ君。手加減は不要よ。あなたはルドルフさんの息子。いいえ、私の息子よ。
Oh? What? Didn't you hate him?
誰に自慢しても恥ずかしくないところを私にも見せてちょうだい。あなたに全てを託すわ。
了解だぜ、母ちゃん。あとは任せておけ。
私たち全員は当主跡継ぎの資格を失っている。もう私たちは取られてゲーム版から外された駒も同然よ。
Oh man, imagine if Battler returned with Kyrie to Ange. Oh man, that would be a dream.
だからあなたたちだけで戦って。
キリエさん。
The nuance of those words was, we've already given up, so forget about us. for that very reason, I won't give up. I'll definitely crush this test or whatever and save everyone.
それでは一番最初のジェシカちゃんへのテストの指示よ。自分の部屋へ行けですって。
自分の部屋？
お屋敷のジェシカちゃんの自室って意味のよね。
ジェシカに代わる。直接伝えてやってくれ。ジェシカ。
もしもし。はい。わかりました。
私からか。もう覚悟決めたぜ。行ってくるぜ。
Even Jessica was probably tempted to succumb to the fear of a girl her age, but she crushed those feelings and strengthened her resolve.
用心してね。
私たちは監視されてんだろ。余計なこともできない。言いなりになるしかないさ。
食堂でジジイは何のためらいもなく瞬く間に6人を殺したという。それは俺たちに対しても同じかもな。
分かってる。返り討ちにしてやるぜ。
無茶はダメだよ。危険だと思ったら自分を最優先にして。クラウスおじさんが自分のために娘が犠牲になったことを知ったら胸が張り裂けてしまうに違いないから。
逆も同じだぜ。父さんと母さんが殺されて私だけが生き残ったら私の胸だって張り裂けるぜ。
バトラ君、さっきの話は本当だよね。
ああ、キリエさんたちはもう覚悟を決めている。
ならなおのこと上等だぜ。みんなの命は私たちの双剣にかかってるってことだ。人質みんなは囚われの身で何もできない。なら私たちが何とかするしかねえんだぜ。
もし何かあったらゲストハウスに逃げ戻って、その時点で僕たちがおじい様のゲームに付き合うのは終了だ。
So only Gohda and Kumasawa saw the corpses. The cousins didn't see the corpses yet. The only ones speaking on the phone are Kyrie and Krauss. Nobody else. Not even Kinzo is speaking on the phone.
その時点で僕たちは宣戦布告。どこかに閉じ込められている彼らを救い出し、おじい様には叱るべき処遇を与える。
Oh God, this is very bad.
いいのか、兄貴。シャノンちゃんもいるんだろ。
They're not doing tests. They're designating spots so they could easily be killed one by one. Oh, this is bad.
だからといって僕は座して婚約者が殺されるのを待ちはしないよ。
Oh, I see.
僕が恐ろしいのは
I know who it is.
おじい様にシャノンが殺されるかもしれないことに怯えることじゃない。僕の婚約者に恐怖を味わわせたクソじじいを君らが僕より先にぶん殴っちまうことだけさ。
Oh, okay, George. Okay.
なるほどな。確かにこいつは
Oh my God, look at this hype.
誰かを決めるってテストらしいぜ。
Look at this hype. Oh, her face is so good.
だな、クソじじいの顔面に一番最初に拳をお見舞いしたやつが次の闘士だぜ。
George, Battler, and Jessica each forcefully nodded their heads and put their fists together. Then Jessica headed off to her own room as designated. Her form disappeared into the darkness of the rose garden, waving in the strong winds. Watching her go, George and Battler gripped their fists even tighter, making them quiver. Left on the second floor, Maria watched Jessica's back through the window. She wore a blank expression.
みんなは何を息巻いてるのかな。ベアトリーチェが蘇ればみんな生き返らせてもらえるのにね。
Jessica's form was already being completely swallowed by the darkness. At that time, the phone began to ring again. Battler and George heard it and came clamoring back, but Maria picked up the receiver right away.
もしもし。マリア様ですか？
Shannon Krauss. And
シャノンです。ジョージ様に代わっていただけますか？
this time it was Shannon on the phone. Wait, the others picked up as well. No, I'm a little bit confused. So Shannon, Nanjo, Cannon, Krauss, and Kyrie are... And this time the message was to tell the next person, George, where he was to go. Oh God. I should stop here. I should stop here. Things will heat up next episode, I'm sure, but still, I should stop here. Okay, next episode is gonna be very intense. I know it. Chapter 16, what the hell? Oh, this episode 4 is very long. So, Virgilia is in the middle of... Virgilia was very cute this episode, so she rose up because of that. Rose up because of that. So 45, 410, 00, and 556. Does that order has some meaning to it? Maybe. I need to later engrave those numbers in my head. So Virgilia, very good. Kingzo, he's on top of B rank, almost in A rank. Still, he's the source of evil. He's very bad. His personality is horrible. Still, he's been very entertaining this chapter all around. So there's that. Gab, she's in A rank, I think. Yeah, she could be S rank, but still not much yet. Let's see, 172 great demons. She's also Beatrice's friend. Grants the power of teleportation as the mage requests it. She uses this wonderful power only for pranks. Her favorite trick is hiding keys and bags on busy mornings. However, this power of hers is an ultimate weapon that risks delivering the lethal blow to a locked room mystery. Her queen bee-like strikes would probably penetrate all famous detectives and make them surrender. Oh, I see. Renove, he's comfortable where he is. Sakutaro, oh man. Let's go to the... Sakutaro... he's comfortable as well. Juza, he's a trope, so no need. These guys, I think they're all not going to appear. Oh man. Okay, let's see. Nanjo Masayuki. Nanjo's son took over the Nanjo clinic. Unlike Nanjo, he gives a slightly dispassionate, indifferent impression. After the commotion surrounding Rokkenjima, he grew to completely despise the press, and never again did he attempt to speak of what had happened at the time. He used to have a daughter, was afflicted with an intractable disease, but unfortunately, she wasn't able to live out her natural lifespan. Oh. I don't know what intractable means. Kumasawa's son works at the Nijima fishing harbor. He must have gotten his carefree, big-hearted personality from Kumasawa. Kumasawa had many sons, and a number of them were away from land as fishermen. It was purely coincidence that it was possible to come into contact with him, as he happened to be involved at the fishing harbor. Hopes are around him that he might have heard a chatty Kumasawa let something important slip, but Captain Kawabata, an old man who used to be the captain of the high-speed boat that went to Rokkenjima and back, it is beyond doubt that of the existing survivors, he was one of those who know the most about Rokkenjima. From various comments by the servants who used to go to and from the island, the media hoped that he might be quite knowledgeable about the internal affairs of the Ushiromiya family. However, he would say nothing, and so they eventually began to forget about this old man. What about Gospel House? What happened to Gospel House? It's not explained yet. Didn't Kinzo have an orphanage that trained his servants? What about that? It wasn't just Shannon and Cannon, was it? There was more, wasn't it? There were more servants there. What about them? Didn't Ange visit them? Where is Gospel House anyway? Oh, Ange, you're so good. You're so good. Still my favorites. Tied with Beatrice. Battler as well. He's so good at raising up the hype. And for that, he's very special as well. In my heart, at least. And I think this is it for now. I think next episode, or probably the after it, I think episode 4 will end, and then we'll head to the answer arcs, I think. And that will be very, very, very interesting indeed.